Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to digital health leaders around the world. Welcome to the January 2026 HITLAB Symposium. My name is Stan Kichnowski. I am the chair of the Healthcare Innovation Technology Lab, and I am very happy to be meeting with you all today. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to be talking today not only about the diffusion of digital health and the adoption of digital health technologies globally, but we're going to be covering a lot of what happened at JP Morgan Healthcare in San Francisco 2 weeks ago, the week of January 11th. And we are going to be discussing not just the evidence that we found and others in our community found of digital health adoption in the global health ecosystem, but also we're going to be really talking about the funding that's going on. You read the reports from all the big organizations that track funding, and you saw how AI led the way. In 2025, you saw a lot of deals being announced at JP Morgan about new funding raises and new rounds being done. It's very clear that digital health is growing in ways that no one has anticipated a year ago. It's very clear that the asymmetrical diffusion and adoption of digital health has taken place in ways that no one predicted 2 years ago. So elements like Lilly Direct and Pfizer for All and other components like that, where medications are now being made more accessibly by the pharmaceutical industry, by life science companies, and elements like what we're seeing from Cuban Pharmacy Direct, where now drug costs on the distribution side are coming down, and we're seeing a lot more competition there and a lot more illumination there, is having a dramatic effect on what's going on in the world of digital as well. And digital is becoming a new way of making sure that healthcare equity is more achievable and that healthcare access is more achievable. So a lot to talk about, and we're going to dive right into it. I'm really happy to have with us in the first round of discussions today Gil Bash, who is an enormous thought leader in the world of digital health. He has an extraordinary track record of not only architecting new ways of developing and diffusing digital technologies, but also making sure that the health equity piece comes first. And he's not just a digital health leader and a health leader in the United States, he has a global reach. And again, HITLAB is also extraordinarily global, as we have work all over Europe and certainly Asia. Very happy to have Gil here today. Gil, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Stan, and I have to say that that's a glowing introduction. I think in your introduction you probably stole about, I'd say about 55% of my material for our conversation. No, I'm just kidding. But I think what you said is really spot on, my friend. And people were saying, where is digital health before? Is digital health viable? The answer to that is absolutely. What we saw at JP Morgan was actually something very important. One of the trends we see is integration, that we're no longer looking at sort of like connectivity. I'll call digital health about connectivity. Connectivity not only between the molecule and the patient, but actually between the information of the system and other parts of the system. Digital health has really become the central nervous system of the life science sector. And that was kind of evident through the conversations. But thank you very much for that. It's very, very gracious of you to have me here.
Nah, it's great to see you, Gil. And again, appreciate everything that you do for the digital health community. And when I say the community, I mean everyone from the bigger stakeholders like employers and health plans and hospitals and life science companies to the startups and the investors and the academic institutions, the policymakers. You're really helping everyone marshal this revolution along the way. Just from what you saw at JP Morgan, what were some of the more impactful announcements that you saw a few weeks ago in San Francisco?
Well, I think some of the bigger announcements we saw that are really critical to watch, and this really touches on the digital or the information side and the molecule side, and this was really about the Eli Lilly NVIDIA partnership on the AI Innovation Learning Lab. I think that's very, very important for the community to watch when people are starting to recognize very evidently that the power of information and the power of innovation are finding their sort of their nexus point. I think that wasn't a surprise, and it is a surprise. I think that that was a game changer for Eli Lilly, and I think one of the big announcements or the big takeaways of that announcement is that companies like Eli Lilly are really going to dominate, I think, the next wave of innovation. It's not just the GLP-1 phenomena. And by the way, um, there was another announcement that I really thought was really critical there, and that was the announcement from South Korea, the ABL, the ABL, bot announcement with Eli Lilly and with GSK about bringing in that technology into those two companies to look at how we cross the blood-brain barrier. I think that was a very key announcement. I think that people who are dealing with Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's neurologic conditions should take great hope from that sort of partnership. I think there's also something that I think folks in America have to look at. Historically, a lot of the HITLAB community has looked within our borders, within the United States, either New Jersey or Cambridge or San Francisco. I'm actually right now in another tropical climate. I'm actually in Florida right now. But the the importance of that is that historically, American innovation was siloed. I think that the BD people from these mega companies are essentially saying to our community, the HitLab community, we'll go anywhere. If it's bold and big and game changing and can advance our timelines, guess what? We'll go to South Korea. We'll go to India. We'll go to we'll go to the AUE. We'll go to Israel. We'll go to France. We'll go to the UK. I think this is a big door opening for innovation around the world. So
I
those are
love it.
two things I saw.
Yeah, that's great, Gil. And just for the HitLab community on this, you're the first to know, but HitLab is going to be hosting a HitLab summit in Seoul, South Korea in June
There you
this
go.
year as a part of the Breakthrough Alliance that Bill Toronto leads. And so just be aware of that if you are interested in attending or sponsoring or supporting with content, papers, evidence you want to present, please do get in touch with me. You can message me on LinkedIn and just let me know and we'll get you signed up and go into that. That's going to be the announcement of Breakthrough Alliance Asia, but that's opening up this year as well. Again, not public information yet, but you're the first to know since you are the HitLab community here, and want to make sure that certainly you're all a part of that. Gil, were there any emerging specific technologies that you saw at JP Morgan that you think have
Yes, there were
reshaped healthcare delivery?
there were two that really caught my attention. Again, and I do want to talk about a trend that I saw there that was eye-opening. I wrote about it for Health Tech World. The There are two meetings going on in JP Morgan. Obviously, there are thousands of meetings going on there, but there were two essential meetings going on there. Obviously, there's the main meeting at the Westin St. Francis, that wonderful fire trap that we crowd into every year. But there was another meeting that I went to that I found was illuminating. I highly recommend it. And this was the Biotech Showcase, which wasn't just reserved for biotech companies. There were about 3,000 people there. I think they had about 350 presentations. I tried to go to about 30. That was a key meeting. And I would highly recommend our community, those companies that are involved in somewhat earlier stage technologies, mid-stage technologies, look at the Biotech Showcase. Um, it was an incredible place to network, meet, learn about other technologies. So two technologies, actually three technologies that caught my eye. Um, One that's I've had on my radar screen for about 30 years, which is um, our ability to look at all animal life and understand, for instance, how is it that the blue crayfish is able to sort of heal itself? How is it that certain mammals or fish heal themselves without needing medicine? How do they regrow parts of their body? And there was Amorphical was a company there at the Biotech Showcase. They're really pursuing that. They've got some very good data, well advanced. I was impressed. That was one. Spinogenics, a whole new approach to neurologic conditions like Alzheimer's disease, like ALS. They're actually looking at how do they harness elements to regenerate cells or synapses. Um, Very, very important to watch. They're making great headway. And they have a very seasoned leader, a woman who's out of Merck Research Labs, who's taken charge of the company. I think they're doing some fabulous things. There was a third company there that I think is very important. And obviously, Stan, I think you'd agree, AI was on the lips of everybody once again. I mean, not unexpected. This company was different, though. It's created by people whose roots are in cybersecurity. And what they're doing to some extent is they're not just collecting data, translating data, whether it's scientific data into vernacular language or vernacular language into scientific data. They're actually securing that data with heightened cybersecurity. And I think that's critical, not just for the HIPAA standpoint, but actually from the intellectual property standpoint. I thought it was a whole new twist on AI. For those of us who use AI, that's everybody probably these days, or if you're not, please touch base with me. I'm curious why not. But the biggest aspect is security of our transmissions, our shares. That company, Bria Health, has it locked in. So I saw three technologies again, two that are harmonious. How do we harness the body's own properties to heal itself? And the third was a different twist on AI that I thought was particularly unique. So that those things caught my eye. You know, Stan, there's sort of the out of the box technologies, I'll call them grand slam technologies. I always find that we need to pay attention to, someone once said at a HITLAB summit, I think it was Sally Ann Frank, sometimes the less sexy technologies that are actually the blocking and tackling that advance humanity. So, I think that looking at us and our healing capacity is akin to that. That always attracts me. It's attracted me for the last 30 years. And I was thrilled to see more progress. And then also AI, the the trepidation around AI, we have to develop technologies within AI to alleviate that fear factor. And I thought that company was doing that. So those are three examples.
I can't tell you how spot on you are about that fear factor. So many executives I know and so many people I know have either been affected, not by AI per se yet, but they're affected by these layoffs that we're seeing so that companies can grow space on their cap tables to actually invest in AI, or they're worried that they're going to be laid off in 2, 3, 4, 5 years because they don't know what AI is going to be doing to their industry or to them their
And that's
jobs.
a mistake, by the way.
Massive,
AI
massive.
AI is nothing more than curated information. And
Absolutely. But last
that's all it
question.
is.
Last question. Just want to really, we have an audience from all over the world, massive audience today watching you, and they want to know what are some of the actionable items from JP Morgan that you can give to them in terms of, whether we've got some folks in the FDA online right now, some folks from, life sciences, a lot of investors, a lot of startups, a lot of health plans and hospitals and physicians. What are the two or three things that you would recommend that they do based upon what you saw at JP Morgan a few weeks ago?
There's a few things I would say. One, I saw the haves and the have-nots. What do I mean by that? There were a group of companies that really prepared themselves going into JP Morgan. They weren't presenting at the St. Francis. They were in the environment. I'll call the environment now JP Morgan Healthcare Week, right? The environment. They were super prepared. They came in prepared. They've been planning for months. They've been setting up meetings for months. They've been, sort of honing their data, their presentations, their messages, and there were those that showed up. Those that were prepared really were outstanding. And those that showed up, well, they showed up. That's great. So that's one thing I would say I see people reflecting on as they leave, that JP Morgan is a happening. It's kind of the Woodstock of the life science sector. That's true. But you've got to prepare going in. Here's what I think is happening, though, coming out of JP Morgan that I think is critical. It's behavior and mindset. I think that what's happening now is mega companies realize that they can't go it alone, that they have the human capital, they have the scale, they have the reach, they have the economic resources, but they are now recognizing that even the smallest enterprise that is well prepared has I'll call it a really good story that they can back up. That's the emphasis, that they can back up. they're open to it. But guess what? JP Morgan is not the time for those smaller companies or innovative companies to reveal the story. They've got to prepare months in advance to do their reach out. So JP Morgan is the opportunity to sit down in one place. It is not the time to sort of say, let me educate you about us. And so what I did see was larger companies eager to meet with smaller enterprises. I think that was very, very important. I saw smaller companies, the savvy and the not so savvy. The savvy, as I mentioned earlier, they've been preparing for that week months in advance. And I saw them making deals. The other aspect I saw were smaller companies finally teaming up with smaller companies. Historically, they kind of viewed themselves as clear competitors. Now I think they saw themselves as complementers, and they were starting to look at the environment of co-opetition. I think that's a very important mindset shift that could advance human health. And I think the agency, with its new guidance, has actually stimulated some of that in terms of how the agency looks at wearables and digital health and so forth. They're accelerating the adoption of these technologies and infusing them into the system. One thing I do want to say, Stan, before we wrap, is just about AI and employment. People are fearful. I understand that. AI cannot do what we do, period. That AI can feign feeling, can feign empathy, but it is not empathic. It has no feelings. It is machine learning perfected to a different level. The other aspect is AI doesn't know what's right or wrong. It curates what it has available. And so humanity is going to be needed to hold the steering wheel of AI for the foreseeable future. And humanity is going to have to make the decision about how we focus the healing system on its end goal to make people healthier. AI doesn't do that. AI sorts through information available. So for those people who are saying, hey, I can get rid of people and I'll deploy machine learning accelerated, I think they should I think they should not put their foot down on the gas pedal with that mindset.
It's fantastic. Gil, thank you so much for joining us today,
Pleasure.
and
Thank you,
looking
Stan, for
forward
having me.
to seeing you when you get back to New York.
Thank you very much. Take care, everyone. This was a fabulous decision, Stan, to do this. Thank you.
Outstanding. All right. Well, so just again, if you're looking for Gil's contact information, please check the chat box within the Zoom meeting and you'll see the team putting it there. You'll also see more information about the New York City Health Innovation Week. Nietzsche, as we like to call it, Nietzsche, not just a German philosopher anymore. So anyway, New York City Health Innovation Week is striving to be the JP Morgan of the East, and the other half of the year. So not competing with JP Morgan, but giving people another opportunity to attend a meeting where they can meet investors, policymakers, and startups, life science companies, and certainly some of the leading academic researchers, family foundations, family funds. We have this year about 100 events that are going to be happening with about 10,000 people joining from around the world, starting with Sunday night with a kickoff party at the Jim Beam Suite in Yankee Stadium, going through, again, dozens of events every day, going through the after party on Friday night in Midtown at a rooftop bar. So hoping you all can make it and hoping you all can help out. If you want to either sponsor or volunteer, or if you have an evidence paper, even if it's been pre-published before, that's fine. We republish and repost and represent again at the HITLAB Summit and at New York City Health Innovation Week, because it is about a global health evidence review. What evidence has there been created over the last 6 months? What should people be investing in and buying? That's what we do to make sure that we're optimizing the diffusion of digital technologies in healthcare and life sciences. Hope to see you in New York City the week of May 4th, and certainly at the summit, May 5, 6, 7. Next up, we are really excited with this next interview. It is Dr. Meghana Mittal from Elevance Health, a leader in healthcare delivery in the United States, with Michael Meaney, the founder and CEO of a company called One Small Step that is platforming a novel intervention for counseling, peer-to-peer counseling online. Michael is a former executive and product design developer and manager at Facebook. So when it comes to user design, he knows what he's doing. And looking forward to this interview as well. But anyway, I think the idea is that we have a lot of other things to go through today. So if you look at the agenda that we have online, you'll see a host of other items that we're covering. We're going to be diving into more details around the JP Morgan meeting and funding. We're going to be going into more details around what's happening with the diffusion of these manufacturer type direct to patient models. And so that is something that is taking the healthcare world by storm. When you see Lilly Direct, when you see Pfizer for All, we heard a lot of information about other major manufacturers in the top 25 coming out with their own direct to patient platforms this year. And you also saw the issuance of the FDA's guidance on digital health for the next few years. And so the issue around evidence generation and FDA processing around AI in healthcare delivery in medicine is now an entirely different issue. And so that's something that is going to be radically changed. Now it is much more about go out there and start using it, and you let us know how it's going, and then we'll regulate, rather than going through a lot of upfront regulation and then taking it apart from there. So again, an amazing piece of guidance from the FDA. We also were part of the ARPA-H announcement for the massive grants in healthcare delivery and healthcare rural transformation. So I think the deadline for that is February 27th. So it's important that you have that on your books, and it's important that you take a look at that. If you have any questions or you need any help writing grants for ARPA-H, again, the grant amounts are for between 10 million and 100 million. And again, we're part of that team and helping out any way we can, getting the word out about that as well. And a big part of the Digital Health Week in New York City on the week of May 4th will be a Federal Health Innovation Day. So again, stay tuned and be sure to sign up for the latest on the actual New York City Health Innovation NICHI. That's going to be a very exciting part of the ecosystem as well. And so next up, we're going to talk to someone who has done an extraordinary amount of work in this area, and would love to invite Matthew Holt onto the panel. And Matt, if you don't mind, we'd love to get your background, and if you could introduce yourself to everybody on the call, and then certainly get more information and get your perspective around the meeting as well. Obviously, being in the San Francisco and the Bay Area, you have a tremendous viewpoint on this, and are certainly able to give people that kind of perspective on what you're seeing in digital health, having covered digital health in so many different ways. And I think the other thing that we've got cooking right now is this idea of what's happening within telemedicine. Obviously, we've seen a tremendous amount of telemedicine innovation happening over the last few years, and that is growing like by leaps and bounds. We saw a number of technologies where avatars are being introduced into the background, and we're seeing a number of different technologies into how other types of avatar, where avatars will they be on a computer, will they be on your cell phone, etc. So that's really what we're seeing happening at this point, is this idea of having avatars there. In the meantime, we've got Michael Meany here, and Michael, looking forward to talking with you. If you could, Michael, give everyone a little bit of background about what One Small Step is and your journey to founding it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Stan. Great to be here, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Mike Meany. I'm the founder and CEO of One Small Step, and we envision a world where access to high-quality mental health care is as easy as calling an Uber. And we are building that world through creating a marketplace for peer counseling on nights and weekends. So we have patients that struggle with substance abuse and serious mental illness. We work with their outpatient clinics to help them have access to our tool. And then we have hundreds of certified peer counselors that have applied to be on our platform. They want to work remote digital hours, and they help people avoid the emergency room on nights and weekends where the highest acuity incidents happen and where care is least available. And then we are building AI tools to like power and scale both sides of that marketplace. And then just quickly, so I used to work at Facebook Marketplace, sort of billions of users. And then I myself am 12 years in recovery. And so this company is kind of a fusion of everything I've done professionally and on my personal experience.
That's fantastic. And tell people a little bit more about what you saw at JP Morgan in terms of AI technologies and how they can help patients and help people in recovery.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting, and I've been looking forward to this panel because I don't want to be too provocative, but I think in healthcare there's the payers, there's the providers, and there's the patients. And I think the world of AI so far has seen the bottleneck in impact to healthcare on how to access patients, but payers and providers haven't really fully like bought in yet. And so I'm seeing a lot of innovation, and I think we saw this at JP Morgan on like back office admin, and then a lot of course, impressive drug discovery and sort of really high tech biotech innovations. Um, but actually, on the patient experience side, I think we're still very early. A lot of pilots, as you noted, a lot of avatars, a lot of creative applications, but few of these have been sort of widespread, and I'd say a lot of them are optimizing for payers and providers and aren't centering the patient experience as much quite yet.
That's fascinating. And so you're seeing that in in a kind of a way where it's going to stand out with partnerships. We just heard Gil talk about how
Yeah.
this co-opetition and partnerships are happening a lot more with smaller startups. Are you seeing that there's a lot of standout partnerships and products and pilots that were being shared there that could be a part of that mental health delivery system?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There were a ton. I mean, and like I think for all of you who were at JP Morgan, it's like almost overwhelming how many meetings and like how many people are there. And I do think we're starting to see these large players, as Gil mentioned, like working with early stage companies. Um, and yeah, Stan, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this. The most traction, like the the most traction that young AI startups have is with payers and providers automating like back office like services, automating accounts receivable, things like that, applying AI to sort of like the business operations of healthcare. And so I think what I was struck by is how much opportunity there still is to apply AI to the patient experience. And that was, yeah, I guess that was not as the primary focus as much as I had hoped.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that that's a part of that what's coming together right now. And we haven't seen startups have this much influence on the ecosystem since the dot-com
Hmm.
boom, when there was a new platform called the Internet, the World Wide Web. And that platform, it took a few years for people to figure out how to monetize it. The Mosaic came out in 93. Then you saw Netscape come out in 94. Explorer came out in 95. And that set off a massive, massive technological race. And you saw Netflix come out, Amazon come out, et
Hmm.
cetera. And so that's the kind of thing that we're seeing today. And all of these startups have an extraordinary influence in all these different business processes. And we're seeing some valuations go through the roof, and we're seeing
Right.
others, kind of seesaw there. But it is an extraordinary time to be in health tech and to be in digital health because of this era of innovation driving so much change. From a mental health standpoint, Michael, how are mental health organizations translating high level conference insights, if you will, into actionable
Yeah.
strategies? What would you tell people they should be focused on here in terms of those insights?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So I was at a conference this past weekend, sponsored by the Positive AI Labs organization, and they're trying to figure out how to embed wisdom into AI, which like sort of sounds hand wavy, but I think the big thing that we see is that the massive AI platforms are where people are going for mental health, right? So like mental health and companionship is the number one use case for OpenAI, Anthropic, all of the major AI platforms. People are going there for mental health. The platforms are not quite designed to support mental health because they're designed for engagement. They are designed for sort of pseudo sycophancy, and they're not able to sort of draw on the clinical or like peer-based insights that people like need who are struggling through their mental health. And so these platforms have a challenge. The challenge is they have millions of people using them every week. What's the right way to identify who needs escalation? And then where are the pathways toward escalation? So is that to 988? Is that to 911? Is it to a platform like ours that has peer counselors on demand? Is it to the hospital? And so I think the opportunity for mental health care is to look at these massive platforms as a huge distribution opportunity and build partnerships to like plug in those gaps when the platforms themselves are no longer able to solve the mental health problems that they are getting. How can they route people to the resources that they need?
Brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Again, any final thoughts or any final comments that you want to pass off to this massive global audience we have listening to you today and that'll be listening to you on YouTube and the HitLab Hub? By the way, if anyone wants to join the HitLab Hub, we do all this for free, but we are supported by your memberships to the HitLab Hub. And Ansley and her team will drop you membership links to BTA, the Breakthrough Alliance for Startups and Investors, and then Kate, the Center for AI Testing and Evidence, and then the Women's Health Tech Initiative. So you can pick out which one you want to join. But even like a $99 a year subscription helps pay for all of this content that we put online and all this guidance on digital health, evidence generation, investment, and adoption. So really appreciate anything you can do there. But Michael, any final parting words for the startups and the buyers that are sitting on the call today?
Yeah, so there's one question from the audience around how AI will help long-term patient compliance. And like I think that just sort of exemplifies the opportunity that everyone has in health tech that like AI, and I think, Gil mentioned this, AI will not replace humans, but it's an incredible tool to amplify the human effect. So something that we're seeing on my platform, we serve inpatient residential facilities. We also serve outpatient facilities. And many of our platform members want to work with the same peer counselor. The peer counselor has different hours, and so they're not always available. So one thing that we're exploring is how can we create like AI agents of our peers so that their members can engage with them, train to that peer's voice, train to that peer's identity, train to that peer's experience so that they have 24/7 companionship. And I think this is just a use case that we've seen where AI is amplifying the human impact. And I think like my broad takeaway at JP Morgan is just like on like the hard sciences biotech side, the acceleration of these models is enabling intervention discovery, drug discovery at a rate that we've never seen, and the upside to that is truly extraordinary. And like I'm so excited to see how those things happen. And Elon Musk at Davos the other week said, there's going to be more humanoid robots than humans. And the questioner said, well, like, what about like meaning? And he said, well, AI can't solve the hardest questions, right? And what do we do as humans? What have we done for thousands of years? We've talked to other humans. It's this age-old insight. How do I solve any problem? You find someone who's been in your shoes and you ask them how they did it. And so we are our task as mental health product designers is building systems that like get that trade-off right. Where can AI help and amplify? Where's the triage to humans needed? And how do we build the partnerships and delivery systems to make that elegant and extremely user-friendly?
There's a lot of brilliance in those words that you just imparted on us, Michael. Thank you. And again, for those in the audience, investors, any kind of rehab facilities or health plans or employers that are looking for wellness programs like this, I think contact Michael. His contact information is in the LinkedIn, is it his LinkedIn and is in the actual chat that you have in front of you. Get in touch with him if you want to be a counselor, if you just want to support him. That this is a great company. We feel this is going to be transformative over the next 10 years in the U.S. healthcare system. It's just absolutely novel peer-to-peer counseling like this, and run by an executive who knows how to build products, former executive from Facebook. Michael, thank you for joining us today. Looking forward to hearing a lot more things in the future from you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Stan.
So one small step, everyone. Keep an eye and subscribe to his newsletter, get on his website, join his platform. It's just an incredible platform, and we're looking forward to seeing a lot of positive news from Michael in the future. Next up, we are excited to have our own Jerry Antamano talking with an innovator in the world of clinical trial systems, Dr. Harsha Rajasima. And I think we're going to hear a lot more about what Harsha found at the JP Morgan meeting as well when it comes to life science technologies that are working in the clinical trial space. And so with that, handing the virtual microphone over to Jerry. It's all yours, Jerry.
Yeah, cheers, Stan. Thanks so much. It's really good to be back for 2026 with our first Digital Health Symposium, leading off in January, which is always our review of the exciting conference and health week that was JP Morgan this month. And I've got the pleasure of speaking with a couple of our startups. Of course, there's a large number of startups that are attending JP Morgan this month, of course, as Gil and Mike mentioned earlier. And I've got the pleasure of speaking with two of our startups that we're working with right now in these next few interviews that we're doing. But Harsha, wonderful to have you on the program. It's been great working with you over these last couple of months, and it's been great hearing about some of the activities you got up to at the JP Morgan event. So we'd love to hear, first of all, a quick introduction about yourself. I don't think the community is that familiar with what you're doing at Jiva and some of your background, and we'll go right into asking about your experience at JP Morgan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jerry, Stan, and the HITLAB team for having me here today, and also for the opportunities to participate in the JP Morgan networking events with the Silicon Valley Bank. So myself, Harsha Rajasimha, founder and CEO of Jiva Clinical Trials. Our vision is to transform the shift from manually run clinical trials over to validated AI agents run and supported clinical trials with the human always in the loop, where AI agents are actually going to do a lot of the busy work and surface risks to the surface, and essentially even draft tasks for humans to review and approve. That's the new steady state and the next reinvention of clinical trials that we are leading.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much for that quick context, Harsha. Now over to your experience at JP Morgan. We'd love to hear about some of the most notable innovations or strategies in clinical trials that were highlighted there, and also some of the emerging technologies that you think that you saw that include AI and certainly around decentralized trial platforms that you think are also going to reshape the clinical research landscape for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, as we know, JP Morgan conference is a vast conference covering a variety of topics. And I have been enjoying going to JP Morgan for last 8 years or so, almost every year, except for the COVID year. Otherwise, the main reason I go there is to, one, listen to what the market is saying, the financial markets, but also the key opinion leaders and what's happening in and around clinical trials, as it's not a scientific conference or a clinical conference where you get to hear the depth and details of the technologies or the inner workings. But I had the opportunity to participate in the HITLAB events with Silicon Valley Bank and other networking receptions, as well as I'm a founding member of BLPN Club, which has its own side events in the Golden Gate Yacht Club, which offered networking opportunities with a delegation from Japan, for example, and other founders and investors. But the key highlight for me, Jerry, at JPM was watching Vinod Khosla speaking live up close at one of the HITLAB and Startup Health event on a fireside chat. Steve was with Vinod Khosla, and what Vinod was saying really struck me, which is think about how these next generation of AI-led, AI-native companies are going to look like 5 years from now. And then visualize that, and then figure out what you should be doing this year in 2026. And so the transformation is evident, right? So we all know the whole world, irrespective of whether it's clinical trials or airline booking, is all moving towards AI-driven, agentic-driven activities. And so where we see within clinical trials, certainly there is a huge optimism, and where implementations have already occurred last year and continue to occur are in the administrative side of clinical trial management, which don't necessarily touch the regulated and patient safety aspects. And even when it does, it's really orchestrating the tasks and drafting actions, right? Not actually taking actions. If it's administrative tasks, the AI agents may even be able to complete the task, but that's where the careful balance between efficiency versus human in the loop. And the more we bring human in the loop, the less slower and efficient it becomes, because AI agents can literally bring thousands of risks and errors to the surface. But then if one human has to review all of them and either accept or reject, that's going to make a huge burden and a bottleneck. And so that's where we see that there is already implementation level showcases and demonstrations and case studies that are coming out. It's no longer in the lab. It's actually in production now. Particularly for medical writing, protocol writing, configurations of the systems, case report forms. Those types of activities are happening in real time. Obviously not necessarily everywhere, but it's already happening in several innovative companies. Certainly saw several companies showcasing some of those aspects at JPM.
No, that's really wonderful takeaways there. And, as you mentioned, you were really there for the conference discussions and to be able to get insights from a lot of the speakers that were at the various different satellite events and the main conference. Were any specific aspects of modern clinical trials that you found, from those conversations that you had or that you heard as specifically succeeding, or were there any common pitfalls that you kept hearing, throughout the week?
Yeah, a couple things, right? So one, a lot of the funding is going, investments are happening at late stage companies, and it's still very difficult, although selectively they are happening in early stage as well. And certainly our core focus at Jiva has been clinical stage biopharma medtech sponsors who have a need to run clinical trials, generate evidence of safety, efficacy, get through that phase 1, phase 2s, and move into phase 3s. And towards the end of last year, we heard a lot of the software as a service is moving into AI agent as a service, right? And so in the clinical trial world, what that means is what CROs offer as a time and materials service, there is opportunity to agentify some of those services, like what a clinical research associate does, or clinical trial manager activities and tasks. Those could actually be, if 80% of those tasks could be delegated to an AI agent, so to take over all the busy work, and then the real human actors could actually look over that. So that's where I saw a lot of interest in that aspect, and the one maturity that I saw compared to last year, to this year, is recognition and acknowledgement that building AI agent on legacy infrastructure versus building a strong foundational infrastructure that's AI native for clinical trials, it's a highly fragmented infrastructure in most organizations. 15, 30 different tools have to be interconnected through manual glues for the infrastructure to actually work. And so there is a good bit of human intelligence that keeps the infrastructure working along with standard operating procedures. And so if we were to agentify operations and processes on an infrastructure, it's better off to be done on a much more stronger AI native foundation, which essentially interconnects all these pieces. So the human glue is replaced by AI agents effectively only when the infrastructure is predictable, it's unified. And so that's very encouraging, because that's been our story at Jiva. Over the last 5 years, we have built that unified infrastructure on which we are now building the AI agents that can actually perform all of these tasks effectively, because it's working on a unified platform rather than siloed tools.
Yeah, no, those are some really excellent key takeaways, especially for the folks in the life sciences part of the industry, and those folks in the clinical trials area that are attending the program today. I think really valuable insights that you were able to share with everybody. Harsha, thanks so much for coming on the program. I'm sorry we didn't have more time to spend with you, but I'm sure we'll certainly have you back on future programs. It'd be wonderful to continue speaking with you, and I encourage everybody in the audience to certainly connect with Harsha. We put his LinkedIn in the chat, and also a link to the study that we did with Jiva as well very recently in the chat too. So I encourage everyone to take a look at what the HITLAB scientists were seeing from the incredible Jiva platform. So Harsha, thanks so much for being on today, and we'll see you again in the future.
Thank you so much, Jerry.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Well, great to have Harsha and the team at Jiva Clinical Trials working with HITLAB here and sharing his insights from a startup perspective and a clinical trials perspective from JP Morgan. Sticking on the startup track, I have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Kate Stevenson now to the program and chatting with her about the future of women's health startups. The CERN Corporation has got a very novel approach to women's health. I'll bring Kate on now and have her give a quick intro and talk more about the important work in women's health that CERN is doing before we dive right into our questions about her experience. Go ahead, Kate.
Hey, Jerry, great to be here this morning, or this afternoon for some of you. So this is probably about, I don't know, like a decade of JP Morgans that I've been to. Probably the first one, though, that I went in as a startup actively raising funds. CERN Corporation is a women's health product. We have a vaginally inserted device that treats infection in women, both yeast infections and bacterial infections. And we are a hardware product, potential digital play. But we're definitely one of those startups that are experiencing all the challenges of women's health startups in general, which is we're dealing with a condition that unless you have it, you may not know how bad it is. A lot of the traditional investors don't really see value in what we're doing. And we're a hardware product because women have actual physical bodies. And we're dealing with what's a very painful, embarrassing condition. So not very easy to talk about. So it's definitely interesting going in when you go into a startup space. And I've worked in med tech for 20 years. I've done 8 different cardiac catheters. I've done aneurysm coils. I've done knee implants all over the body and stuff. This is one of the hardest to really innovate in, just because there is no real template for a women's health company to really move forward. And so when you come into JP Morgan, it's definitely you hit every event you can.
Yeah.
And we did a lot. My CEO and I, we were running from event to event across San Francisco, north of San Francisco, south of San Francisco. I was down in Burlingame. It was a lot of work. We're still recovering this week.
I hope you can track of all those steps that you were taking.
Not as many. You don't get that many steps when you're with a glass of wine in one hand and frantically, fumbling with business cards in the other. Not as many steps as I would have liked.
Oh well, at least you were able to experience a lot of San Francisco, albeit that you've been to a number of these different JP Morgan events already. But we certainly want to focus on this one that just happened in 26, and you just spoke about attending a multitude of different gatherings and a multitude of different areas of the Health Week. Was there anything that stood out to you in specific about any interesting trends or innovations in healthcare, and particularly women's health, of course?
So there's a couple of things I'm balancing here. So because I've been in the industry so long, yes, I'm an executive for certain corporation. I'm doing my best to really build out certain core technical strategy, but I'm also an early investor myself. And so watching both these trends from both sides, both from being the one trying to acquire funds and also getting the update on the other side of where funds are going, what kind of exits we're seeing in this space. And definitely I've had a major focus on women's health. I probably applied to over 20 separate women's health focused events around JP Morgan. I have yet to actually get into the main conference. I think for a while we were potentially a very small client of JP Morgan. But usually it's all the adjacent events. So I'm involved with a number of different organizations, the BLPN, the Bullpen Group, MedTech Women I've been with for 14 years. There's Aquilius, there's about a dozen other events that you get a lot of invites. And all the women's health ones, I'll tell you this, they were full up the first week of December.
Yeah.
So just to let you know, I had a lot of friends calling me after Christmas, before New Year's, going, can you get me into this event? What about this event? They're all full. Have you heard of these? And so literally I was planning my stuff back in December. And even though, yes, there were 20 events, they were full. And when you went to those events, like for example, I went to the Portfolio, which is the first event they've ever done at JP Morgan. It's an emerging women's health fund. They're just starting their second fund in the space. There were hundreds of people, like I call it a crush, like just the bodies of all the women in the room. Not particularly glamorous location. It was a little beat up. They had a few snacks, mostly some champagne. But the number of people and the quality of the people in the room. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're wondering, like, I remember 3 years ago, I was trying to find female CEOs of startups to get on a panel for MedTech Women. There were at least 50 of them in that room. So that is incredible that not only we've been talking for years, like the need is huge. The need to invest in it is huge. The need for the technology, the trials, all of that is huge. But what I'm seeing is there are a lot of very influential, powerful people now starting to show up and take direct steps. And speaking as a woman of a certain age and who's had a chance to be in the industry a while, it takes a while to really set yourself up to make that step and to really convince, to commit to new initiatives. And so what we're seeing the last couple of years is we have things like the Women's Health Advocacy Group, which is the first political advocacy group focused specifically on issues addressing women's health within the United States. We're seeing Portfolio, which is literally not only are they raising funds, they are educating women who traditionally have not invested or become investors on how to be an investor. Because a lot of the needs that we see is if you're a patient, if you're a woman, if you have these conditions, you are willing to pay an insane amount of money. If you don't have these conditions, if you don't understand what it's like to be a woman, you may not invest in them. And so getting more women to be investors is one of the major milestones to getting women's health to move forward. And then the other one is just getting senior level operators to come in. I've seen, like, I have 2 faculty positions at 2 University of California campuses. I see a lot of very young, very enthusiastic people who want to go out, they want to change the world, but they don't have the network, they don't have the expertise, they don't have just the funds that it takes. Mm-hmm. So I'm seeing women who they've had 30-year careers in medtech going, okay, this is my second career. I've got my retirement fund set up, my kids are out of the house, they're off at college is paid for. I've got another 10, 20 years that I can really dive in, and this is where I'm going to do it. And I can sympathize with that because that was part of the opportunity I saw when CERN Corporation came along, is this isn't just a single startup opportunity. This is an opportunity for me as a senior practitioner in the field to really meet the overall need in women's health and push it forward.
No, that's incredible, Kate. And it was great to hear you talking about all these amazing events surrounding women's health. That you were able to attend at JP Morgan that were full from weeks before the event even started, which is incredible. Just a quick off the topic question for you in terms of those events. Did you find that this year, there was substantially more women's health events available at JP Morgan compared to in the past, or do you think there definitely is more to improve, in that sense for JP Morgan specifically?
Well, I would say that I have in past not targeted women's health specifically before I joined CERN. And so I couldn't say what this looked like in 2023. I don't know. I know in 2025, I was part of a couple of events by MedTech Innovator, a couple of other big innovation space. There was a very positive feeling. So the first time in JP Morgan, I was JP Morgan in 2020. We all got incredibly sick. We didn't know what was coming. A lot of us picked up COVID for the first time at JP Morgan. And in 2025, it was like, finally, we're getting past this. We're
Right.
finally getting back to normal. Okay, we have an incoming president who is very pro-business. Let's go. This is going to be the awesome year. And then we hit this instability in the government that has been an ongoing challenge. And so in 2026 coming in, what I heard repeatedly with the women at those women's health events is we need to move this forward no matter what. So were there enough events last year? Maybe. Could more have been done? I don't know. Was more done this year? All I know is I saw a lot of women step up and male supporters coming out saying, like, look, whatever happens this year, and we can't necessarily tell. I mean, are we going to have a government shutdown on Friday? We don't know. I was on a phone call with a program director at the NIH yesterday, trying to get an update about our $2.5 million SBIR grant. It's in the works. There's a lot of stuff moving there. And she said, I can't even tell you if I will be responding to emails next week. And so the positive thing that I'll say though is, yes, that's disheartening. It's discouraging. But the vibe I got in the room at those women's health events is, well, we're going to have to do it anyway. We're going to have to come up with new crowdfunding models. We're going to have to keep, hosting more events. I think part of the reason we had so many events this year is just so many women stood up and said, I've got to host an event. The only way we're going to get through this is to make as many connections as possible to improve the number of odds of meeting the one person who's going to be able to get us through the situation. And that was our vibe as well. Like CERN, that was the reason we were running back and forth over San Francisco, was to try and make as many connections, take as many opportunities as we can, because we don't necessarily know what 2026 is going to bring.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and it's great to hear that there was that energy around that, and the drive as well from everybody to really want to drive forwards no matter what for this year for women's health. So that's really amazing to hear. From your role at CERN, you've obviously seen a good amount of emerging technologies. Which ones do you think, CERN included, are going to have the biggest impacts in 26?
So this is going to be interesting. So I tend to overthink a lot. So I'm a PhD. I've been studying the medical device field as my research topic for the last 10, 20 years as well. And it's always interesting when people talk about what new technology is going to be popping out, is going to be really driving forward, especially at JP Morgan. And I always say you're going to see it on the patient last. So anything that's being announced at JP Morgan, it's been in the works for 10, 20 years, especially anything truly disruptive and different. What I'm seeing exciting this year for me personally is the stuff that's happening on the back end. It's the changes that are going to allow us to be able to do the crowdfunding that's going to influence what technology gets driven forward. Now, what announcements were made by the big strategics, I can't say, but I do see a lot of technology that we are seeing more in the home applications, but it's a lot more nuanced. There's been a lot of idealism, like we're going to do this at home. All we have to do is put some sensors, do telehealth. And we're realizing, no, like there are privacy concerns. There are bandwidth limitations in using the technology. In AI, it's like, okay, are we going to be doing calculations? Do we need to have cloud servers? How do we manage the privacy of that flow of data everywhere? So one startup I'll say that I've got to make a call out to is Percy Sleep. They are an amazing thing that is doing sleep tracking. Their number one focus is the autism space. So dealing with passive sleep monitoring. But what they do is they're not a camera. They're an ultrasound technology. They're an AI machine learning technology. They are a complete ambient monitoring with what I call is edge computing, meaning they have a little puck, they do it all. What gets sent out of the home is very minimal, but it's in the form that doctors need to be able to diagnose sleep conditions. And they're going to be moving on everywhere from autism to PTSD to postmenopausal conditions to a wide range of potential behavioral symptoms. That is that really tough nut to crack in terms of privacy, but accuracy and clinical efficacy. And so I was so excited to see her out here at JP Morgan pitching. She was part of the Ignite pitch event, didn't win, but also love call out to Lara, who was part of Cala Health, another women's health company that did win that event. So what we're seeing is it's a very nuanced application to AI. And it's not just, can we use this in a clinical indication? For example, 80% of the AI, so there's been about 1,500 to 1,600 FDA approved technologies that have gone through using AI or machine learning technologies. 80% of those are in imaging. They are being used to fast track scannings, replace radiologists. We're seeing them in EKGs, we're seeing them in EEGs. We're seeing them a lot they're taking existing signals and just making it easier that a non-skilled individual can practice it. And you have these large data sets where they can just train those models very easily. That's not as easy in a lot of other conditions where you don't have a large, consistent data set to train from, and where you don't necessarily have an easy clinical workflow that you can just copy and paste into an algorithm. One of the things I tell my students is part of the risk that's evaluated when you're doing these AI is if a skilled clinician cannot follow your reasoning, if it's a complete black box, that is a different regulatory pathway than if you are just fast tracking and automating an existing workflow. So if you're doing this large language learning model for this complex algorithm that you can't explain to even PhDs, your ability to deploy it, you're going to have an insane amount of evidence to be able to deploy that to patients or to even non-skilled practitioners who don't have deep expertise in your field.
No, that's wonderful. And really appreciate you giving a shout out to another startup as well. It's always, I'm sure they certainly appreciate it. We'd encourage everybody in the audience to certainly check out what you guys are doing at Certain Corporation and of course Percy as well. And just to wrap up for the last sort of 60 seconds, Kate, I would personally love to hear about how you would sort of align the work that you're doing right now at CERN and connecting that to sort of the broader sort of innovation trends that were highlighted and that you saw at the conference, to give us sort of that cohesive sort of insight.
Oh, I asked me to sum it up in 60 seconds. So I will say women's health, a lot of times we say anytime you're at a startup, you're always building the plane as you're trying to fly it. There are many areas of women's health that you're trying to invent whole new areas of aerospace. And it's frustrating because there's such an intense need and there's so much work that's still left to do in terms of the science. And it's something where you need to have a lot of community, you need to have a lot of back and forth to make some of these very key decisions of what is an acceptable level of risk for a novel technology. Because that is something where you also have to see the upside and the benefit. How do you educate these patients? Because we're talking about women's health. We're talking about half the patients out there. So, and it needs to work just as effectively on a PhD as it does. I have a lot of family members. I have a family member who never finished high school. They've got intense needs. I have friends in the special needs community where you have adults with all these conditions, but not the cognitive ability to understand what's being done to them. And so we need to have a lot of conversations and a lot of the community. So I will say JP Morgan, all these events, yes, it's stressful. When I'm not on stage, I'm an introvert at home. I want to be left at home with my tea and my cat. But it is worthwhile to have those connections, to meet these amazing individuals and to keep building each other and helping each other to make it through the next year.
I think really important advice all round for the upcoming year of 2026, Kate. Okay, thanks so much for coming on, sharing your insights with us. It's such a pleasure to have you on the program and look forward to having you back on, hopefully with Greg next time as well.
Glad to. Need to get Greg on here as well. He's a little different, but we work really well together. So thank you very much for all you're doing with the HITLAB and glad to be here. No,
wonderful to have you on, Kate. Thanks so much. Okay, wonderful. Well, it's great to chat with Kate and Harsha, two of our HITLAB startups, which again, I encourage everybody to check out via the links that the team is sharing in the chat to both Kate and Harsh's personal LinkedIns and the company websites as well. Next up, we're taking a slightly different track and speaking to Michael Salgala from the NIH, and really want to hear about what he saw from his perspective, of course, from the governmental side at JP Morgan. Michael, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today and share your insights with the HITLAB community. Really appreciate you popping on with your busy schedule. Would love to hear a quick background about yourself and the important work that you're doing with the NIH right now.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for including the NIH as a stakeholder in this event. My background, I call myself a recovering scientist. I started at NIH as a medical researcher, and then took a giant swing, moved to the other Washington, moved to Seattle to join a startup that had 3 people and 6 months of funding, and I moved with a spouse and a 2-year-old. So for those entrepreneurs and wannabe entrepreneurs, on this event, keep in mind that the decisions you make are not just yours. You should include your loved ones as well, because if you're going to start a company and not make money for 2 years, you should keep them in the loop. So moved to Seattle. So we were the highest risk. We were started by 3 scientists who had never done it before, and what do you know? 5 years later, we IPO'd. So you never know. And as importantly, we got 2 products into registration trials in the cancer space. So I came back to Washington D.C., and joined the venture team of an early stage VC. We did C and A round and company formation, so got to help other innovators start companies for a while, and then spent probably most of the next 10 years in leadership roles at various startups. And then immediately before coming back to NIH, I was a lobbyist down in downtown DC. And what we were mostly retained to do by universities and foundations and companies were to be connectors. So to connect them to different parts of the federal government that could facilitate their strategic goals. And that's a good segue into what my group does now. We're in the NIH Office of Tech Transfer, that's licensing and partnerships. And so what my group does is work with companies primarily. They could be, by the way, any size. They could be any geography. You do not have to be located in the US. And we try to connect them with not just NIH, but other federal agencies that have capability, support, and resources that could facilitate their commercial development of their medical solutions.
No, that's wonderful. And we certainly encourage everybody, especially if you are a startup listening in today, to connect with Michael and find out more about what his group is doing and see how you can get involved in that specific community. So thanks for sharing that with everybody, Michael. In terms of the JP Morgan conference itself, we'd love to hear and have you highlight any opportunities for startups and innovators to engage with the NIH, of course, along the topics of what this specific discussion should be about around beyond the SBIR programs and what other opportunities there are there.
Right. So let me address, in general about NIH. I'm not in the room where it happens, for those of you who have been to Hamilton. So I don't have any inside knowledge, regardless of whether I'm in a position to share it or not. What I do know, and the administration has been very clear about, they're very business oriented. They are stressing at NIH partnerships, and they are stressing the facilitating the development of medical solutions that are accessible and affordable. And so that continues what largely has been NIH's mission. So that part hasn't changed. As far as the amount of support that we get, we're following the same news from Capitol Hill as anybody else, and we're We're encouraged by the bipartisan support that has appeared, but again, we don't know what things will look like. We do, though, encourage companies to continue to reach out to us. As far as things like the SBIR program, so my group is engaged with the intramural or internal program, and that's our own 8,000 scientists in Bethesda, Maryland. Anything NIH funds, whether it's a SBIR to a company or a UO1 to a university research center, those are part of the external or extramural research programs. And for most companies, small and large, their knowledge about how NIH can help them begins and ends with SBIRs. And it's a great program. And however, every year, NIH and other federal agencies in the health tech space enter into hundreds of partnerships, both preclinically and clinically, to bring resources, capabilities, and support to bear on behalf of co-developing strategies and solutions with companies of all sizes. So that's going to continue, in the coming fiscal year.
Brilliant. Yeah. And with your attendance at the JP Morgan event, were there any notable trends or announcements that you were attending that are signaling any specific like new pathways for healthcare that you can see, and any sort of biotech commercialization?
Yeah, so in general, there's going to be more emphasis on a company's medical solutions being accessible and affordable. There's going to be, I won't say standards, but it'll be part of the metrics as far as things like product approval and accessibility to market in how much of an impact your medical solution has on the patient community. So and this has been a continuing trend, that it's no longer what the market will bear. If you've got a unique solution which has significant clinical impact, then you will continue to have a little bit more leeway in what reimbursement and what those prices can look like. But it'll have to be something that's pretty substantial. So what I heard about at JP Morgan is that if it's incremental, you can still go to market, you can still make money. But as far as things like reimbursement and getting somebody to pay for it, it's going to be scrutinized more and more. Now, in general, as far as some of the things that I heard, especially for earlier stage companies, is that it continues to be a challenging funding environment. That's not rocket science to anybody on this call. However, one thing that was stressed is to do strategic planning for areas other than equity investment. So it's for companies to really start to look into things like family offices and venture philanthropy, and have those companies, especially early stage, go from, yeah, I've heard about it, to actually devoting time and opportunity cost to pursuing that. So a lot of companies don't realize that the support, whether it's direct support with funding or other types of support, say from a major foundation or from the federal government, provides that company early stage validation that they can use as a differentiator when they're trying to get that equity investment and the company is looking at 10 other companies in the AI, digital imaging space. So it can be used as a way to not just get support to decrease your dependence on equity investment near term, but it's an important way to get early validation that you might be really onto something. And again, set you apart a little bit from all the other early stage companies that equity investment firm comes across at JP Morgan.
Some really good insights there from you, Michael. I really appreciate your time. I'm sorry we don't have more time to to get more of that wisdom out and some of your insights from JP Morgan. But I do encourage everybody that's tuning in to certainly connect with Michael. And if you have any further questions or want to hear more about his experience at JP Morgan, and of course the important work that the tech transfer group is doing at NIH, I certainly encourage you to check out the website and connect with Michael as well on LinkedIn. Michael, we know you're super busy over there at the NIH, so appreciate your time to spend with us today to connect with the HITLAB community, and we look forward to carrying on the conversations in 2026.
Thank you. Thank you to HITLAB. Thank you, Jerry.
Cheers, Michael. Thanks so much. Okay, wonderful. It was great to hear from Michael and the NIH and their work supporting our startups in the ecosystem. And talking about startups in the ecosystem, we're going to spend a quick few minutes with another of the HITLAB startups in the ecosystem and spend some time talking to Jonathan Brown, who was also at the JP Morgan conference, and would love to hear more about the great work that he's doing at AO Vision. It's incorporating AI to help physician teams with their diagnostics with imaging. So, Jonathan, welcome to the program. Really great to have you on. It's been wonderful working with you these last couple of weeks. Would love to get a quick 60-second background on yourself and the work and the platform you're developing at AO Vision.
Yes. So by trade, I'm a mathematician. I spent about a decade in the insurance industry quantifying and pricing risk. And I'm leveraging some of the insights I have in insurance and bringing it into healthcare. And the idea is that what makes insurance resilient is that they get to learn from the good and the bad. They learn from the past claims and losses and be able to use this for future decision making. In healthcare, there's no real infrastructure that enables doctors to learn from other doctors in the field for their real-time diagnosis. So that's kind of what we're building. We're building an infrastructure that helps, we're a computer vision company that helps doctors interpret images and reduce their diagnostic risk. But the knowledge compounds in the field. And so essentially at the heart of what we're doing is we are enabling specialists to encode their expertise in interpreting images and into AI models and sharing them with generalists. And being able to shift a specialist capability to the generalists where we often interact with doctors at the first pass in the healthcare system is we're interacting with generalists. For them to have specialist capabilities means we reduce the uncertainty of diagnosis. We reduce the need for second opinions, the need to fly across the country to see an expert, because in our area, whether it's rural or nearby, those doctors actually have those capabilities in their hands, and that's kind of the why we're providing the infrastructure that we that we're building.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. We'd love to have you dive a little bit deeper, sort of into the practical application of the AO Vision AI technology, and also find out more about what differentiates your approach to a lot of the other AI solutions that are currently, in the market of imaging and diagnostics and stuff.
Yeah. So essentially, we extend our infrastructure with a UI that is for the everyday image screening of doctors as they're looking at let's say, for example, a pathologist, as they're looking at a cell and saying it's malignant or benign. Our AI is learning from them in real time. Doctors spend 20, 30 years becoming a doctor. It makes no sense for them to have to upskill and learn AI. It's important for them to understand the best way to use it. So our AI learns from the doctors and it creates AI models in the background. And for subsequent patients, it starts to augment them and help them identify objects or regions of interest in the image. And those AI models can be shared across the team or across the health system eventually as we get FDA approval. And what's different is the difference is that previous generations in this computer vision space, AI for images, what we observed is that they optimize for the wrong variable, which is accuracy. Going for this perfect model makes this very capital intensive. And many have failed because by the time they're FDA approved and their science works, hospitals can't afford their solution. So instead of going for the perfect model, why don't we just target the experts in the system who are known for making some of the heroic decisions, life-saving decisions, and encode their expertise into AI models? Doesn't have to be a perfect model, but extending that capability to generalists. And this is kind of how we get more experts in the system without changing much about how we work. And so we have a much more cost-effective approach on delivering AI that's pennies on the dollar in a fraction of a time. We can deliver value.
Yeah, no, I think that's incredible value in all a multitude of different ways to those physician teams. So you look forward to the further development that you guys are making, and then looking at your experience at the JP Morgan event. I know we only have a few minutes. Drawing on some of the conversations that you had at the conference earlier on this month, how are the investor and partner and customer expectations based on those conversations that you had influencing what you guys are doing, in your direction and growth strategy and investment goals going into 2026?
Yeah, so what we've seen, what was good to see is that there's been a lot of investment, especially from some of the big public health systems. There's some of them that are extending and acquiring new hospitals in rural communities, and some are investing heavily into AI tools like GPUs from NVIDIA, et cetera. And what this means for us, this actually is a great opportunity for us since we have a cost-effective approach for deploying AI. This allows us to kind of take more of a hybrid approach and not fully focus on just cloud, which is what we've been offering, and now it can become a more economical approach for hospitals to acquire technology because they're actually buying GPUs and machines from NVIDIA that could really lower the cost of deploying AI as opposed to on the cloud platforms. So we've doing a bit to modify our platform for that, and some education, because AI is moving so fast and it's still so new. It's not clear on all that you can do with AI. And so what we're looking for to do is more partnerships where we can be more intimate and kind of co-develop and explore all the capabilities to be able to bring a lot of value for patients and safety.
No, that's brilliant. That's wonderful. And again, like I said, looking forward to helping you on that journey this year and seeing the amazing improvements and difference you guys will be able to make to these physician teams, and ultimately the patients themselves, of course, with these quick decisions that you'll enable physicians to make with your platform. So I encourage everybody that's on the call, if you are interested in what Jonathan is doing, please check out the link to aovision.ai that we put into the chat, and of course connect with Jonathan as well to find out more about how they're helping physician teams with their platform. Jonathan, thanks so much for being on the program, sharing some of the insights that you learned at JP Morgan and how they're applying to the goals that you've got with helping physician teams this coming year.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Awesome. Okay, and with that, we are going to go on to the almost halfway point of the first January 2026 Symposium of the year. And I'm going to welcome back our very own Stan Kichnowski to have a great conversation with one of our Center for AI Testing and Evidence board members, Chris. So over to you, Stan.
Thank you, Jerry, and great interviews. Learning a lot more about what happened at JPM and what's happening in the digital health ecosystem and adoption of new technologies. And to tell us a lot more about that as well is Chris Huber-Wrights. He's a lecturer at Columbia University and a leader in the AI ecosystem in healthcare and life sciences. Chris, welcome to the program. And if you could give everyone a little bit of a background on yourself and your journey.
Yeah, thank you, Stan. Chris Huber-Wrights here. Good to see everyone on here. I'm a scholar practitioner. I work in healthcare at the Fortune 50 payer level. I also do research and teach, as Stan mentioned. and so kind of spanning healthcare and higher ed. Excited to be here.
That's fantastic. And if you could, just relative to what you saw at JP Morgan, what you're seeing in the ecosystem today in general, give the audience, again, it's a global audience, people from all around the world, payer, provider, pharma, employer, investor, startup, policymaker, et cetera. Give them a little bit of an understanding of what you're seeing with, especially with the announcement of ChatGPT and OpenAI now opening up a healthcare vertical. What do you see that as? What's the biggest impact of what you see in that announcement that's going to happen over the next 12 months feasibly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it helps to zoom out a little bit, and you could almost say that this was inevitable because health is such a personal and kind of universal thing. And what I'm seeing is a big shift from experimentation to execution. And I think that this announcement kind of underlines that these large players who are, increasingly the incumbents, are betting on health. And so one thing that I think you'll see is a big shift from piloting chatbots to actually seeing co-pilots baked into workflows, to give one example. Yeah, I can keep elaborating, or we can kind of
keep going.
So I think that a problem that we've had in before this era has just kind of been like capability, intelligence that scales. Now, money's being invested in this, so we're seeing more integration, more reliability, important to Kate members and any stakeholder, and especially clinical, just governance at scale. We're seeing affordances for privacy and security and things like that. So how this could change going forward is seeing more just specialized models going closer to the physicians and clinicians, helping those patients learn, but in a personalized way that preserves their privacy, things like that. And I'm excited to see, we used to talk about Dr. Google, and I don't think that goes away. There's still a lot of great information out there from, say, Mayo Clinic or things like that. But increasingly, people are using chatbots as kind of a personal health assistant. And I actually find that really promising. Of course, it's got its risks, but what that could represent is, instead of getting a quick answer, as in like a search result, you can have more of a longitudinal partner that's coaching you through your journey, your personal health journey. So there's a lot's kind of convening on this moment around health to kind of lift up both the patient as well as the clinicians, helping them avoid burnout, for example.
It's fantastic. We have a lot of health systems. We have a lot of hospitals that are listening, that are on the program today. And what kind of advice would you give to them about how to integrate AI tools, where to integrate AI tools these days?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Increasingly, we're seeing enterprise grade tools, and that means that they're HIPAA compliant, by default, that they accommodate things like role-based access, so people have just enough access and not, not able to see things they're not supposed to. And auditing, the ability to kind of trace what led into a decision, things like that. I think we'll see more like risk tiering to be able to help understand and prioritize the most acute cases, so that our providers and clinicians are putting their time in the right place at the right time. And then human in the loop, I think, is a little bit buzzwordy, but it is important. That's not going to go away. So the ability for clinicians to access and absorb the right information at the right time, to be able to make their approvals, escalate, or get a second opinion when things are not as clear. And then I think a lot of this, maybe this is the experimental side of it, but I think that over time we'll be understanding more about kind of the boundaries. So I mentioned like access controls, but what's the optimal way to route a question or a diagnosis or those kinds of things. This, given AI's ability to kind of accelerate and make recommendations and things, I think that there's probably still a maturing that will occur in the coming, year or so.
Absolutely agreed 100%. I think we're going to see a lot about what we saw with the web movement in the 90s. We're going to see go from point solutions where websites cost $1 million, $5 million, $50 million to build. And then 10 years later, you had Squarespace and you had WordPress and a lot simpler, easier, cheaper ways to build websites. I love what you're talking about, Chris. You're absolutely visionary in this area. Last question, because we do a lot of workshops on this stuff, right? HITLAB's a teaching and research organization. And so when we do a lot of the corporate custom work we do with Fortune 500 companies, we talk a lot about what they need to do to integrate digital technologies and digital AI and AI into their organizations on a day-to-day basis. From folks here who are with large institutions, what would you recommend they do and how would you recommend they do it to bring AI into the workplace, into the desktop, into the functions of their staff, so they go from using it once or twice a day to 10 or 20 times a day?
The first thing, I'll give you a handful of kind of tips. The first thing I would say is don't panic. This is moving fast. Take a step back and evaluate where you are in this moment and the degree to which you're confident. If you feel frozen, HITLAB has resources for this. Kate, Center for AI Testing and Evidence, for example. Lean on your peers and so on, but just take a good, clear-eyed look at where you are. And then if you've gone from a place of maybe you did a bunch of pilots, maybe, in the 10s or 20s pilots in the previous years, this is a good time to focus. Think about outcomes. Think about what you're really needing to achieve and what you want to get out of AI. And then start to separate your table stakes kinds of AI, the functions and the outcomes that you can sort of hand off. Like I've done a talk on responsible cognitive offloading. That's a, just to introduce that phrase. And then what are your strategic bets? So your table stakes, you're kind of setting a new floor. Your strategic bets are going to be a reach. What are the big things that you can go for your stakeholders? And then I guess it could be like two more. Just a nod to safety and privacy, super important. That I think that's increasingly getting baked in, but you should bring your own intention to that to steer it because it's still early. So don't take that for granted. And then I'm big on AI literacy. So I would say, bring your workforce along. It's going to be really important. And if I could give one more, I would say, bake it into the flow of folks' work. So it's not just if you build it, they will come. That's important. But also bring them along and be thoughtful, use empathy and human-centered design to surround these important stakeholders, clinicians, and so on, and the patient too, and their caregivers, et cetera. Surround them with answers and touches that are supported by AI.
This is great. Chris, thank you so much. Looking forward to having you back again on a regular basis. And again, I really appreciate your leadership as a global fellow and board member on the Center for AI Testing and Evidence, and looking forward to seeing more from you and your publications in the forthcoming year. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Again, everybody who's not following Chris, please do see his LinkedIn on the chat and take a look at what he's speaking about, what he's writing about. Phenomenal scholar at Columbia University and teaching and researching in AI and its use in healthcare delivery and life sciences. And from New York City to Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, we're going to go from Chris to Shekhar Rawan, who is the founder and the CEO of Waddle, a extraordinarily disruptive technology that's going to help moms and new babies all over the planet and make sure that they're getting the care they need to get through picking up passive biosensor and biomarker data from a smart changing station. Shekhar, welcome to the program. How are you?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, I appreciate your time and know how busy you are. Again, you're a former Google executive. You did great things there, and then you decided to go into digital health. Talk about your journey and your purpose and a little bit about Waddle for 60 seconds.
For sure. So Waddle started with a very personal challenge. My son, who's our second child, we brought him home and he got sick. What we were struggling with was really just a way to kind of get his information to the doctors and from the home. And there's like no infrastructure for that. There's no tool. There's no solution there. And so we built Waddle as a means to extend health system infrastructure into the home. And that's what we do now. We launched the product. We've been out on the market about 13, 14 months. We went consumer first. That gave us a lot of validation, a lot of feedback to improve product usability and features and functions. And now we are in health systems where we are able to monitor children and we collect infant vitals in the home. We stream that to the health system. And now we have an AI layer that essentially is going to, what we can do now is predict risk of disease in infants. And we collect our own data through our device, and also the app is extensible so that you can collect data from third-party devices. So if you have an oximetry device or if you have other temperature thermometer, things like that, we can collect that data, pulse, and put it into the app that streams to the clinical portal. And the goal here is to really just make this a standard of care for everybody. And certainly 2026, we're off to the races. There's been a significant demand that's coming directly to us.
It's fantastic. And tell everyone a little bit about what you saw as the major announcements at JP Morgan this year.
For sure. So I think the sort of big elephant in the room is the Medicaid cutback. So one of the big challenge right now facing every NICU center, every pediatric and OB center across the country is that the budgets are being slashed. And there is a constraint now in terms of being able to safely discharge infants and be able to manage ever tighter budgets. And Waddle is the only solution there where we can safely discharge infants and send them to home. And we're working with HITLAB on our study that will be published over the next couple of months to show that validation. So that was one. It's just and of course AI, everything. I think there was a ton of conversations like repeatedly around how do you use AI to improve workflow, reduce admission, improve outcome. And so we're kind of right smack in the middle of all of that. And then I would say the other kind of challenge announcements that I kept hearing about was just the changing pace, the consumerization of healthcare, right? And so whereas traditionally healthcare was kind of very much in the sort of like there's a health system, you had to go to the health system. Now healthcare is coming out more and more out to the patient, to the consumer. And so we see that with the growth in the wearables, the platforms that are really improving patient data collection, but also like the patient education, right? Compliance management and using AI to layer in over that. I think everything is about data. Health systems just don't have the capacity to take just massive amounts of data without any insight. So like what's happening is there's going to be data that's coming in, but it's really the insights that's important. And so the AI layer becomes, an important piece of that. So budget, AI, and consumerization of healthcare.
One of the things we saw was, and we heard about this earlier from Gil from Fin Partners, was just a lot of announcements around partnerships between startups and things like that. What did you see in terms of startups and working with other startups and that kind of co-opetition happening in at JP Morgan this year that may be different from other years?
What I saw was, we connected with the UCSF Stanford Pediatric Device Consortium. That was like really incredible, being able to, see that sort of like the mechanisms there available for really early stage startups to plug in, to understand, to get guidance, I think that was really interesting. We connected with folks across the UC hospital systems where clearly there's like much more appetite to, find solutions to help deliver quality care. But with a sort of improved cost structure. In kind of meeting some of my fellow co-founders that were both in our sort of VC's co-portfolio companies, and also just new. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for collaboration in terms of being able to bundle products, to be able to leverage each other's, plumbing, if you will, to the health systems and to the EHRs. To deliver care. We have just announced 2 partnerships that we signed in December, and they're going live. One with Blueberry Pediatrics, which is a virtual pediatric platform, and the other one with Simply Fed, which is a virtual lactation consulting. So like you can deliver those services now on top of Waddle, and we can connect that data as well back to the healthcare system. So there's a lot of, every startup has limited resources. We're trying to solve the same problems. Leveraging each other's skill set is super, it's the right business decision because, you could potentially get like access to things that you don't have to, build in-house, but also from learning, just pure like, hey, what works, what doesn't work, how do we accelerate the process? And so our companies, it's built in our DNA that we iterate on everything, including our go-to-market strategy. And so we use that, and certainly GPM this year was a lot of like, hey, connect with the other founders, and their app was really good. I was able to kind of meet and connect, and you and I went out and met folks across the regulatory folks, and VCs and healthcare systems and other startups.
Yeah, I think that was one of the highlights, was just meeting Vanud Khosla from Khosla Ventures for a few minutes. And
yeah, I mean, that's like he's a rock star, right? So you're meeting like a celebrity.
It was amazing. But I think again, we talked a little bit about this previously as well. I want to ask you the same question, but from your experiences at JP Morgan Health this year, what are some of the key takeaways that you would want to relate to this global audience? I thought we have this massive audience from all around the world about what they should be taking away from JP Morgan.
Yeah, I think this is like the basic lesson. You get what you put into it, right? Go in there prepared with identifying what I always go into these conferences with 3 things, right? We need talent. That's on top of our list. We're always looking for great talent to join the team. We need clients, and so we need health systems. We need to connect to health systems. We need to understand where the problems are, where their bottlenecks are. How do we, kind of plug in there? And then the third piece is really just resources, right? Like who is either like financial resource or strategic resource, that we need to kind of connect with. And so we do homework in terms of like lining up folks we want to meet with, see who's out there. And then you go through a much more systemic approach of like, you've reached out to them, you're going to meet in person to basically build out on the conversation. So we've had both cold conversations for first-time conversations, and then we've done the follow-up afterwards. But the ones that are more effective is that if you have clear things that you're looking for, plan for it, figure out who is going to be in that category of people. And even if the people you want to meet aren't there, but they're sort of, one connected plus one connection is there, it's a good way to build that. It is busy. It is noisy. There's a lot of running around between events. So having a clear strategy going into to determine like what you're trying to get out of it is really, really helpful. That's probably top of line for me. It's just like know what you want, know who can help you with it, and then reach out to them, build those things, and then go into the conference.
It's fantastic. And don't forget to join us at the New York City Health Innovation Week, the JP Morgan of East, Shaker, so that we can see you
Absolutely.
out there.
Absolutely.
And just so everyone knows, if you want to come and see this smart changing station, by the way, you could go to Amazon. Okay, Waddle is on Amazon, and the reviews are phenomenal. HITLAB scientists did a review of all the reviews, and we're talking about just some of the most extraordinary reviews we've ever seen of any digital health device on Amazon. So take a look at it and look for more data, like he said, from the HITLAB study coming out later as well. So Shaker, again, thank you for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing you at New York City Health Innovation Week and seeing you on the symposium in the future. Take care.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thank you.
So again, incredible platform, rapidly diffusing, and keep an eye on Waddle. Subscribe to the newsletter, join them on LinkedIn, and follow their Insta. Find out what they're doing, because this is a platform that is going to be doing a lot more than just taking baby measurement weights. It's already doing more than that now, but it'll be doing a lot more than that as well in the future. Speaking of the future, who likes to talk about the future more than Matthew Holt, a longtime friend and great fellow Scotch whiskey enthusiast. Matthew Holt is the founder and the author of the healthcare blog, Healthcare 2.0. He's done numerous different types of board work, investments, and strategy work for digital health companies over the last, I don't even know, Matt, if I could say 30.
Don't say, because you were there too.
25 years. It's getting ridiculous already. So anyway, Matthew, thank you for joining us. And if you could, everyone knows who you are. You're probably one of the most famous digital health advocates in the world. If you could, let's start with your take on JP Morgan. What were some of the most important signals that you were able to pick up when you were, you live in the Bay Area, so for you it was an Uber ride. But when it comes to really focusing on primary care, I think that's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, I took the ferry. So Stan, I actually did a presentation because I'm going to show you. I can show you if you want to take
please
time off. I can show you what I actually. There's no question that AI was a big deal. I will get to AI, and I spoke about AI on this on your I think you May presentation, May Symposium.
All right, I'm going to hand over the virtual stage to Professor Holt.
All right, I will. Let's go on that one. So I'll speak a lot about AI. I will get to the end, which I think is important, but it's how is AI going to be used in primary care? Hopefully the slideshow is going to operate. Come on, little computer. There we go. This is me if you want to find me. Yes, Stan's right. I founded Health 2.0 a long time ago. I'm wearing the Health 2.0 t-shirt from Japan 2017. That was towards the end of Health 2.0, no problem in the beginning. But I am trying to sort of straddle this interesting part right now, and I will take my 15 minutes and I'll try to not exceed my time too much, to both sort of think about how do I think we fix the whole healthcare system, and how is technology changing primary care? And these two things, in my view, are very interrelated. So let's go. All right. This is a barbershop, the High Limit Barber Salon in Vallejo, California, where I was on Monday. Why was I in a black barbershop in Vallejo, California, which is this is not Palo Alto, this is not Marin County, this is one of the poorer areas of the Bay Area, because the fellows in the middle are from the Roots Community Clinic, and they are handing out blood pressure devices to the fellows on the left who are barbers. Why are they doing this? Because they want those barbers to start working as community health workers, to start taking blood pressure of people who come to their barbershops, predominantly Black, Latino clientele, who go to the barbershop a lot and never go to the doctor. What's going on here? Well, it turns out that when these guys measured their own blood pressure, most of them were massively out of range. Why is this? Nobody in this country goes to primary care and gets this stuff checked. About half of Americans don't have a primary care doctor. So what's wrong with primary care? Let's just get back there. Well, here's the basic issue, right? If you go to medical school and you spend your 4 years doing that, and then your 4 years doing that, working super hard, being top of your class, then you spend 3 to 5 years in residency, then you go do a fellowship, and you come out and become a primary care doctor, you get about half the amount of money that the smart kids who do orthopedics, cardiology, urology do. So why the hell would you do that? So not surprisingly, a lot of doctors in current America would rather be on the top of this list than the bottom of this list. What has happened as a consequence of that? Well, primary care has sort of de-aspirated, if that's a word. And now there are a number of different ways that people are getting primary care. The predominant employers of primary care are big hospitals. These are the big hospital systems. I won't go into my rant. You can see it online about how much money these big hospital systems have got, how much they've got in their reserves, how much they sue how much they are frequently busted suing their very poor patients. But nonetheless, one thing they've been doing is for a long time is buying doctors, right? They've been buying clinician practices, but they lose money on all the clinician practices they buy. Why is that? Bob Coker from Venrock wrote a piece about this back in 2011, maybe $150,000, $200,000 a year. That's because this is a chart from this fellow, Andrew Sang, who you should definitely follow on LinkedIn. Andrew's put this chart where he basically looked at the profit level, the margin, and the volume of and how much different DRGs get for hospitals. And if you look at the blue one from the top right, this is orthopedic surgery. They make a lot of money. If you get a knee replacement or an ACL repair, something that Stan and I know something about from our snowboarding days, they're very profitable. Cardiology, which is the one, also super profitable. You see in the top right corner, you're very, very profitable as a hospital. So the job of primary care doctors is to get the people who need this stuff into their affiliated hospital. If they go somewhere else, it's called leakage, and that's a bad thing for hospitals. So that's what we turn most primary care doctors into doing. But they're not all the primary care doctors. You want to try and find a primary care doctor? You probably can't find one. But this is the urgent care in my neighborhood in Marin County, just north of San Francisco. And you can see a bunch of different urgent care, some of it owned by big health systems, some of them owned by venture-backed companies. The Carbon Health is owned with venture-backed, probably PE owned now. And if you look at it, here's a chart showing you about nearly a half, 40% of urgent care is owned by hospitals, feeding into those hospital systems. And a big chunk, 17%, probably more like 20% now, owned by private equity. So these are feeder systems designed to make money off services, not to look after the whole care of the patient. Go back to those patients, who are visiting the barbershops. The third place where primary care is showing up a lot now, and this is just one commercial I picked from a company you all know. You may have bought the stock. If you bought it at the right time, you did well. If you didn't, you're probably doing badly. But this is Hims, the telehealth company, which has now made a lot of money selling boner pills, hair pills, and now fat pills. Or is that what Trump calls it? The fat pill? I think he calls the GLP-1s. There is a ton of direct primary care to pharmacy going on. A lot of it's cash paid. Some of it's starting to be covered by insurance. And when Stan earlier this morning, when he was trying to call me on stage while I was still in the bathroom, didn't have any clothes on, so that's why I didn't come on Stan mentioned this. He was talking about going direct, from the pharma companies like Lilly and Pfizer going direct to consumer. That's also a slice of primary care, but again, that's not all of it, right? So what we haven't done is successfully figured out how to get primary care to look after the mass of chronically ill people on a regular basis. We're doing all these other things. We're trying to put them in the hospital. We're trying to sell them drugs. We're trying to sort of get them urgent care. We're not thinking about the holistic whole person. We've done a really shitty job in America of doing that. But have we, historically always done a shitty job? Well, kind of, yeah, but we have tried stuff. So you may or may not know who these people are. Guy on the left is called Sidney Garfield. He's standing outside the Contractors General Hospital outside the Grand Coulee Dam in 1937, which was the first hospital in America where you could prepay as an employee of the dam, and then later at the big shipyards in Oakland during the war, you could prepay to get all your care taken care of. Guy on the right is a guy called big industrialist called Henry Kaiser. After the war, they got everyone in their shipyards to use this system, and then they opened it to the public. Kaiser Permanente Foundation Hospital, Oakland, opens about July 1945. You know this organization now as Kaiser Permanente, massive prepaid healthcare system, which is currently buying all the other prepaid systems it bought, Geisinger and others. The theory behind the Kaiser Permanente system is I get prepaid, so it's not fee-for-service medicine. Instead, I'm getting a lump sum to look after the whole population. And I figure out how to spend that money. And hopefully I don't spend more than that, because then I run out of money. I'm not saying they're in any way perfect, but they have a different philosophy for primary care than the rest of the system, which is still a fee-for-service system, which still does better by doing more. Okay. This isn't the first time, again, people have said, well, that's a good idea. Let's try to do it. Back in the 90s, when Stan was a young assistant professor, and I was just cutting my teeth at Institute for the Future in Harris, there was an organization called Mulliken, which was trying to do a sort of become a medical group that took prepaid capitation. They merged with another one called Med Partners, whole bunch of activity around this, and all these things happened, and then they blew up. The problem was these organizations could not effectively manage capitation. They weren't as good as they thought they were, and their relationship with health plans was too adversarial. So they received capitation, like a lump sum for the payment coverage of their people, but they couldn't manage it. Kaiser has the health plan and the medical group and the hospitals, and they can manage it internally. It didn't work in this strategy. Having said that, if you look at the bottom of this, there was the advisory board, which is now owned by Optum and United, but then a very, very powerful independent consulting group. Basically went around the country telling all doctors and hospitals that this was the future and that they should create a rich primary care base, which would do population health. They were wrong, didn't happen, but a lot of hospitals got influenced this way. And a lot of them actually bought physicians groups and sold them in the 90s before they started buying them in the 2000s and 2010s to just drive referrals, as I showed earlier. The problem was, and I don't know if you've, this is a chart that I did from way back when. The problem was that underlying all of this managed care that we talked about in the 90s was just fee for service. This chart just tells you that almost all of the managed care activity, which is the 36% in 1997 when I surveyed physicians, was fee for service. And it really hasn't changed. I did a piece on Humana's managed care in Medicare Advantage. The numbers are very similar right now. We still have a very small slice that is real capitation, real risk bearing by primary care systems, and it doesn't work. Doesn't mean, click down, that we haven't tried it, right? All these organizations, Oak Street, Cano, Care, CareMax, even Babylon, which bought a bunch of medical groups, have tried to do this again, have tried to do managed care and capitation and risk bearing. All of them are blown up. We don't have the skills involved at the clinician level to do this and to spread it. It's just not happening. It's the system is rejecting it. Here's a great example, great podcast you should do with this guy, Scott Conard. Scott ran a medical group in Dallas in the 2000s. And when the ACO legislation came up, he went to, they were very successfully starting to manage care and reduce costs for basically it's a primary care integrated group. He went to a local health system. He said, let's get together and we can make a big ACO and we can like reduce costs and be part of the ACO program. And basically all of his people, after they did the merger, all of his people got fired. And then he got fired. And he talked to the guy in strategy and said, what happened? Why did this thing not work? And the guy in strategy health system said, you do realize your group was costing us over $100 million a year in admissions because you were too good. You were stopping people getting to the hospital. So it's a great story. I would definitely go listen to what Scott's Scott's edition of the Renner's Health Value podcast with Stacey Richter. Okay. So what is the answer? If capitation doesn't work and if primary care has been blown up and we're not treating those people well in the barbershop, who end up in the barbershop, what is the answer? Maybe this is the answer. This is some of you know Jordan Schlein, his group Private Medical. It's great. It's concierge medical practice. The problem is it's like 40 to 80 grand a time. So if you're not a Silicon Valley billionaire or multimillionaire, which sadly I'm not, despite my time hanging around here, probably not scalable. There are people trying to do this at a bigger level, though. This is Solace Health. They're charging somewhere between $4,000 and $7,000, depending on your age, for basically total concierge primary care. Again, that's just for the primary care part. Now, I like this model, but it's clearly not scalable at these prices. There is something very interesting. There's another company, MDVIP, which does this primary care stuff. They have panels of around about 600 as opposed to the 2,000 to 3,000 you see in traditional primary care practice. And that is giving you part of the clue. How do we get to that level? So how do we do it? Let's do the math. We've got 900,000 physicians, roughly, in the country. Typical primary care panel now about 2,500. We've got 340 million Americans. And these concierge PCP panels have 600 patients. So somehow we've got to figure out where do we get 570, if you do the math, 640, we need 570,000 primary care doctors if we want to do concierge care for all, which I think does work. And we don't have enough. We do have a lot of NPs. Okay, right now we're spending about $15,000 per head. And we're only spending $700 to $1,250, around 1,000 of that, less than 10% on primary care. What I think we should do, and this is my policy part, is bump that to about $2,000 to $2,500. So give everybody in America a voucher, but you've got to spend that voucher at a concierge clinic. You have to buy primary care at a concierge clinic. And I explain why I think that'll work, right? What does that do? That gives the primary care doctor for their 600 patients per doc, and it won't just be one doc, maybe it'll be a barbershop-based clinic, who the hell knows, all kinds of innovation, around 1.2 million. So they can pay themselves like an orthopedic surgeon, $500,000 a year, and they have around $700,000 left to buy programs to help manage those patients, especially the chronically ill ones who require a lot of care and a lot of service. Okay. So what happens next? This has been enjoying. He's the guy who runs Open Health, which is trying to build the barbershop clinic for hypertension. Peter is, fascinating guy, and he's talking about how can we get access, how can we get all the people who are like completely underserved, not in the system, maybe going to a community health center, maybe using the emergency room as their primary care doc. How do we get them into the system? We also need a big effort to figure out how to do that to improve their care. But if we do that, we know how to fix stuff. This is Bob Matthews. He is at a company called Primed Physicians, a medical group you've never heard of in a town you've never heard of called Dayton, Ohio. Instead of the California average of people being under control by hypertension, which is about 40 to 45%, or the Kaiser average, Kaiser does pretty well, around 70% of people are in control for hypertension. If they have hypertension, their numbers are below 130 over 90. They're at 95%, including in their inner city clinics serving mostly African American populations. So we know how to do it, right? This is the South Central Foundation NUCA clinic in Anchorage, Alaska. They've figured out a way to do more primary care, community-driven, and it has amazing results. You can go read up on this. It's a great piece in one of my articles linked to ChatGPT. Really fascinating clinic. We can do this. We know how to improve primary care, improve chronic illness, and we will, if you look at this, reduce hospital spending. Here's a study from Millman telling you that hospital spending inpatient care for these types of clinics goes down, and ER costs goes down dramatically. I think we can save a lot of money in hospital care if we do this properly. All right, so now I said tech innovation. I won't bore you with this. You've all talked about LLMs enough. You know there's a ton of healthcare applications out there. And then, of course, the big announcement was both ChatGPT and Claude Anthropic are now including in their packages the ability to get your data in there from wherever your record is in the Epic system or Medidec or wherever it's supposed to be. I've been doing a lot of this with my own health journey at the moment, just putting my own records in there, but now you can do it directly. This is clearly a big deal both for consumers and obviously we've heard a lot about how doctors are using it. And here's an example of Peter Lee just doing a curbside consult using ChatGPT, but actually a couple of years ago. So what did I learn at JPM in the last couple of minutes? Well, I did this panel with these three brilliant female medical directors, Amy Parekh from Included Health, Kathleen Jordan from MIDI Health, and Palabai Sanyal Day from General Medicine. So these are a combination of sort of MIDI is more like a specialist organization for women and sort of midlife women around menopause and other issues. Included is more of a sort of first stop navigation portal, but it has a medical group. And General is a new medical group trying to sort of allow people to buy into specialty care more quickly, more easily. What do these three have in common? What did I learn from the panel I ran from them? Well, the first thing is that if you do telehealth first, it's better than doing regular appointments because you can do a bunch of stuff. You can have AI deliver the patient information in advance to the doctor. The AI can also deliver information to the patient. So there's a pun, all right, in advance. Second thing is you can integrate specialty care into that visit straight away. And the third is we have more and more testing coming, microbiome, genomics, but also just blood testing from Function Superpower. And that can be interpreted by app in front so that you can manage patients. And finally, there's this company called Doctronic, which is delivering basic care purely by AI, now licensed in Utah. So that's an interesting way to say, how are we going to get AI into, basically, if we do this primary care that I'm talking about, how can we expand it using AI? All right, I will shut up. I've written this article called Concierge Care for All. You will find it on the healthcare blog. So I'm both now moving from just being an observer to being a professional ranter. And Stan, I will engage you in my attempt to get the government to give us all a lot more money for primary care and to stop spending unnecessary money at all these big expensive hospitals and health insurance companies.
Love it. That would be outstanding. And Matthew, hopefully to see you at the New York City Health Innovation Week. Also in New York City, May 4, 5, 6 in Times Square. Again, we are looking forward to the JP Morgan of the East with New York City Health Innovation Week. We're up to 100 events now, 10,000 people joining us. So hoping to have you there as well.
I hope you'll invite me to come rant there as well.
You're always invited to rant on anything related to HITLAB, Matt. You know that. But anyway, thank you again. Loud round of virtual applause for Professor Holt again. Just incredible perspectives and insights on this fast and asymmetrically changing digital health ecosystem and changing in ways no one anticipated 3 years ago, and now changing faster in a lot of ways than anyone anticipated even 2 years ago. So thank you very much. I appreciate your coming here today. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Stan.
All right, and moving quickly from the Bay Area to health plans and revolutionary digital health platforms with Pravej Alam and Dr. Meghna Mittal. Thank you both for joining, and Dr. Mittal, handing the virtual stage over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Stan, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Incredible conversation so far. I'm really enjoying learning about the exciting AI innovation happening across our industry, especially in healthcare. I'm Meghna Mittal, Senior Director of AI Technology at Elevance Health, and I'm really excited to be in conversation with Pravej about operationalizing AI. Just a quick, I guess, many of you might have learned about this. A widely cited study at this point by Gartner shows that 95% of AI initiatives fail to make it into production. And that's just not a statistics. It mirrors what many of us are experiencing every day. So this topic is very real for me, and I'm, specifically because of that reason, I'm really excited to be joined by Pravej Alam, co-founder and CEO of Pearl Digital AI, who's been in the trenches helping organizations move AI from concept to real-world impact. And Pravej, really great to have you. But before we dive in, for those of you who may not know Pravej or Pearl Digital, could you give us a quick snapshot of about your background and maybe a problem that you're focused on solving at Pearl Digital?
Absolutely. Thanks, Meghna. Very nice meeting you, and hi to everyone. So again, my name is Pravej Alam. I'm the co-founder and CEO of PulseDigital.ai. I've been in the healthcare for many years. I spent 10 plus years at United Health, or multiple hats, and paired with a few other United Health Optum fellows, we decided that there are a lot we could do outside of United Health. It's such a large company. We got exposed into many healthcare. We called it wicked use cases that we were able to solve being within the Optum. We spent years at the Optum R&D to finding out exactly what are the pain points. So we wanted to get out of the political limbo and get into ourselves, that where we could actually get materialize some of our ideas that we have been thinking for a long time, right? That's how we started Pulse Digital. Our primary focus within our company is changing patient behavior. Being at the United Health Group many years, we have tried many things, solving problem, providing digital capabilities to the patients, or automating, augmenting RPAs, so-called AI, whatnot, right? It probably, looked really fancy from outside, but in the real time, are we actually bringing the ROI in terms of changing the patient behavior? Therefore, we are getting the better outcomes, right? So we believe we have a really good agenda in place and the use case that we're trying to solve here, that we want to coordinate the patient, physician, nurse, and the caregiver under one platform, and having them working together, coordinating to reduce the hospital readmissions, helping not getting the cancellations to the place that were impacting the hospital bottom lines, and then in general make people adherent to their care plans. That is very important. So all three actually impacts significantly into the ROI of the investment, as well the patient behavior that directly impacts the patient outcome, that also have the relevance of the total care continuum. So that is what we are trying to do here. And we are very excited. We're getting a really good traction within the United States as well in Europe, right? And the very first question, Meghna, that you thought, that actually always scares me. 95%, 90% AI actually failed. Are we in a wrong place? I believe we are not. We are at the very right place, because I think we firmly believe we identified the key concern, and we have the skills as well, the motivation to solve it together.
Absolutely. And it's never about the model. It's really about understanding the ecosystem. And that's exactly what you described. So really exciting. Again, speaking about the JPM, the insights that everybody is picking up on, I'm really keen on understanding how, based on what you saw at JPM this year, and again, interacting with other startups and other companies, what does operationalizing AI actually look like in healthcare today, from your perspective?
Sure, that's a really good question. It was the first time me being at the JPM. I got super excited. I'm going to San Francisco. It's going to be great weather. Yeah, it was great. But then once I got in there, I got overwhelmed. There's like a lot going on in there, right? So more hopping from one place to another. But every time I moved from one spot to another, I actually met a lot of mindful people that are going through the similar challenges as well, the journeys that as a founder I'm going through, right? So my initial focus was that how can I be successful connecting the right dots that actually aligns with the mission and vision that I have for PowerDigital.ai, making the patient behavior, right? So I wanted to see that, what has been actually getting really good traction in the AI to answer your question. Majority of those things are coming in that intelligent triggers, right, being part of the clinical decision systems, right? So taking away that low value clinical works that currently the providers are performing, right? That was the one area. And then other area to be very discreet is that a lot of documentation work, right? That also gets into the low value, but actually Scribe is getting a lot of tractions, right? So I think these things gives you really quick wins, right? And you can actually start positioning yourself for the better part of the AI, I would say, right? This is just the beginning that can we actually take away some of those low value work that so that our providers can focus into more patients.
Yeah, and I think I was speaking to one of the other startup, and what they also mentioned, and something that we experience as well working in healthcare is the I guess the most valuable use cases are the boring use cases you will find in healthcare. That's where you'll find the most value for buck. So that really resonates what you just mentioned over there. And
absolutely echo. Adding to that, basically it's a very good point that I'm actually raising fund, right? So where I should be excited about bringing the most compelling piece of it, but what I hear, where is the money, right? So when you have to bring the balance between the money and solving the real use case, you get into that challenging position, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the other thing, there's a study that I was referring to, a couple of days back, where you learn your neurons sort of connect a lot more when you actually learn from the mistakes as opposed to the success. That's when the progress happens within the neuron. So I guess speaking of that, what are the most common mistakes or misconceptions that you have, that you see when organizations actually try to move from pilot to production?
So, I mean, this is another great question. We are at a local healthcare facilities in Minneapolis. Minnesota is full of healthcare companies, right? We are very lucky to be here in this ecosystem. So just talking to one of the CIOs of org a couple of days back, because they're very much interested about our product. They want to make it as a co-development opportunity, right? So they are also going through the same kind of challenges that, what if we do pilot your product, but then what is our success, right? So I think not only I'm trying to get this product within their system, at the same time I'm trying to educate them that what will actually make you successful, right? I don't have the magic answer in here, but many cases I think what it is that a lot of healthcare orgs they don't have the right stakeholder in this mix. Some folks in the care are hard about the AI and they want to try it out and see how it goes, right? But I think very first we need to focus into who is going to be the ultimate stakeholder of this initiative, right? What do they have any roadmap on that one, right? And what the success is going to look like? Can we actually measure that, right? And what is your data strategy as of now? A lot of places they don't have any data strategy, right? They don't have that data governance, right? So if you don't have those things to begin with, what are you going to ended up with a bolt-on AI, right? That is what the feedback I got from the hospital systems, that we've been talking to a lot of AI shops, and they know that a lot of places are not actually ready. So what we ended up getting those bolt-ons, right? Rather, what we are seeing that your system is your product is going to reside within our clinical workflow. That we like about it, because it's going to get embedded within that, right? So that's going to require a little bit more rigor, right? Who is your stakeholder? Who's going to finance it? How are you going to take it in? How is it going to get connected to your the patients? And at the end, do you know how to quantify the value?
Yeah, I guess what I'm hearing is more than the model or the problem, it's about the strategy, the data, having the infrastructure in place where you can actually make progress.
Right.
I guess, just another question about I think you're solving a really, important problem within Pulp Digital, but I'm also curious, other AI use cases that you heard, or the partnership or business model that you heard at JPM, if anything stood out to you that you would like to share with our audience over here today.
I mean, I think I was, probably it was, forgive my ignorance, I have seen a lot of companies are trying to automate leveraging AI, the clinical trial process. There are tremendous amount of companies and then new startups are there that they're doing XYZ to automate the clinical trial, which is great. And then drug discovery is another area, right? I mean, I think we have the data, and if we know how to connect the dots, there is a tremendous value, right? So surface level, I think those are two areas caught my attention.
Yeah, no, it sounds very relevant for sure. I know we are coming up with time, so just we can continue this conversation for hours, and I would love to connect with you, and I would invite others to also connect with Pervez for all these insights. But if you have to, I guess leave away with some thought, right? What are the most practical lessons that this audience should take away if they want AI to deliver measurable impact in 2026?
I don't have a really fine answer on that one because I'm kind of struggling on that as well. But one I know with my X number of years at the healthcare to be focused, right? You need to have a really good data strategy. You need to know your data, number one, and then you need to know that what problem that you are trying to solve, and do you have sponsorship for that one, right? So the vision, mission as well, the necessary components, the data and the money is going to be requiring that, and you need to have a lot of patience. You need to incrementally improve it. You're not gonna, like I said, you can have some low value work to be done, but if you have a holistic approach that you want to augment the clinical systems and you want to add more patient values, I think that requires more holistic approach, and that goes deep down.
Very much on point. Yeah, the real work is in the operational details. So again, Pervez, thank you so much for your grounded and real world insight, and really appreciate. And thank you everyone for joining us for this conversation. Handing back to you, Stan.
Right.
Amazing interview. Really appreciate the insights. And again, thank you, Dr. Mittal and Pervez.
Thank you.
And we are going from one amazing group to another amazing tandem. We are thrilled, first of all, to have Caduceus Capital as a part of the HITLAB Breakthrough Alliance community. They're now on the Breakthrough Alliance board. And next up is the Breakthrough Alliance chairman, Bill Toronto, the president of the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund, meeting with Peter Mika, who is a principal and a managing partner at the Caduceus venture capital firm, and looking forward to hearing what they are doing as well in digital health. Handing the virtual stage over to you, Bill. Okay. We seem to be not having Bill and Peter lined up at this point. So we can certainly talk about other things in the meantime. Give us 2 minutes to work out some technical issues here.
Stan. I appreciate it. I'm really excited to talk to Peter Mika he's a partner at the Caduceus Capital Partners. And first, let me just say welcome to the board of the Breakthrough Alliance. I'm really happy you're joining us, and we'll talk about the Breakthrough Alliance in a few moments. But we have a really interesting audience. It's not only students, but it's venture capitalists, it's entrepreneurs, it's all sorts of people part of the healthcare ecosystem. So they learn a little bit about yourself. Can you tell me about your career journey to becoming managing partner at Caduceus Capital Partners? What was your career like, and then how'd you end up becoming an investor?
Thank you, Bill, so much for the opportunity, and thanks to Stan at HITLAB. We've enjoyed a really fruitful relationship over the years. I've been an investor, always interested in healthcare innovation and technology. I've been an investor at Caduceus Capital for a number of years, since the inception of our fund. Prior to that, I was a partner with Deloitte, spent my career in healthcare, life sciences, and technology, ultimately led our industry practice. We enjoyed, significant relationships with the traditional market incumbents, but it was clear to us at the time that the marketplace was shifting, the consumer was becoming more important. There was tremendous convergence with other sectors. And so I was grateful Deloitte let me branch out and found and build our practice around emerging markets in healthcare and technology. I really expanded that to a place that COVID really put on a launch pad, right? It became really apparent after that. The underinvestment in technology and healthcare. At Caduceus, we're finalizing our next fund. We've had a fair amount of success in the vortex of healthcare and technology. We believe it takes more than capital to scale a business. Ultimately, we view ourselves as scale capital, and so we've built out capabilities around talent, launching an accelerator for a go-to-market strategy and connecting tech-enabled solutions to the traditional market incumbents, and those are the businesses that we lead. Exciting times in this business. You see, after COVID, you see a tremendous amount of reinvestment in the industry. I think organizations and investors are looking for a path to profitability. They're looking for organizations that have breakthrough innovation and technology that's solving the big issues in healthcare in terms of access, affordability, social determinants of health, and the like. So really excited about this next chapter.
Oh, great. Fantastic. If I could ask just a little follow-up question to your firm, a little bit more detail about where you invest. You mentioned it looks like access to care is one area. What other areas do you focus on? For example, we do mostly pharma services out of the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund, but just curious what parts of digital you're focusing on besides access. Is it patient? Is it hospital? Is it everything? And maybe what stage you kind of invest in as well.
Yeah, so we're a seed and Series A investor in digital health technology. We tend to steer away from solutions that require FDA approval. It's a longer tail. It's a different type of investment thesis. So we're looking at digital and SaaS-based technologies. A number of our companies are in robotics, sensing companies, and underlying technologies that really have an interest in both traditional and non-traditional potential customers and investors. So you'll see, many of our companies have a customer base or ultimately get acquired by technology companies that are looking to enter the space, organizations like Samsung and others that are seeking those verticals. We get pretty involved with our organizations. We're not a spray and pray firm. We typically take a board seat. We like the founder to control the equity. We think that's important. We have a number of founders that we've worked with a second and third time and have a demonstrated capability to scale their business. We produced a recent white paper. I encourage others to take a look at it. The thesis is around channel partnerships and the accretion of value. Our view is that the underlying technology in businesses is table stakes, and it's not necessarily a differentiator in a market where a few smart people from MIT can replicate an AI agent, right? And so we believe that the secure channel partnerships with the right partners that get your product or technology to market faster is a real differentiator in the market, and can ultimately leads to a higher accretion of value to early stage digital health technology companies.
And how big is your portfolio today? How many companies do you have currently in the portfolio?
Yeah, so out of our first few funds, we average about a dozen investments. Okay. We've had a number of exits. We're proud that our distributed paid-in capital is, probably in the top 10% of kind of like-minded firms. We believe that's largely because of our ability to help with the go-to-market strategy of these organizations, as we scale our business.
Okay, well, we'll have to maybe do a follow-up call and compare notes, because we're very similar. We're more growth, but very similar in ideology. So I'd love to have a follow-up with that. But let's talk a little bit now about the Breakthrough Alliance, which I'm very fortunate enough to chair. What drew you to the Alliance board, and why do you feel like this is the right fit for you? You mentioned you've known Stan for a while, but just curious, what made you want to join?
Yeah, I mean, relationships matter. We believe that in a era of increasingly advanced technology, that relationships and the ability to have true channel partnerships to fill the gaps in your capabilities is a real differentiator of value. We loved what Stan and the team at HITLAB built around independently assessing the underlying technology stack. We believe that's a differentiator to our limited partners in terms of explaining to them the due diligence that we go through in making our investments. We're all healthcare operators, bankers, and consultants, so we know the industry, but keeping pace with the emerging technology and having that kind of independent assessment of, hey, does technology really do what it says it does, right, was an important draw. So we love what Stan has built. We share deal flow, he shares deal flow, and it creates an ecosystem of like-minded individuals, much like yourself, right? We don't view the ecosystem as having competitors in the space. We view other investors as potential co-investors. And we run an ambassador program at Caduceus Capital that has about 30 like-minded investors in our ecosystem, and it's very common for us to share deals, to share information, insight, and collaborate in building eminence in the market.
So from now that you're joining the board, if you just look at it from a board perspective, we're obviously more of an advisory board, but still have quite a bit of influence in supporting what we're trying to build. And how do you see, your role in the board supporting the Breakthrough Alliance's mission at this stage?
Yeah, look, I've been very lucky in my career at Deloitte. I really spent my career in the boardroom, kind of advising CEOs on growth strategies, CFOs on financing transactions and M&A, helping companies with regulatory issues and compliance. And so I just feel that it's kind of a natural extension now in my role at Caduceus, providing, a level of oversight. Our job really is to listen, right? Listen, ask the right questions, point people in the right direction, be a resource as organizations think about how they build and scale their business.
Well, great. And then as you come to join us and we look forward, how do you think this is the community, the Alliance portion. Obviously, HITLAB is the analyzer of different companies' validation. How do you think we, as the board, though, and a community, can help advance healthcare, not only in the sort of the tri-state area which we launched, but more globally? As you know, we've launched Europe in the past 2 years. We're going to be launching Asia Pacific at the end of this year. So the BTA is growing, but just more curious how you see, what's our best way to advance healthcare?
Yeah. Look, I think information and data is power. I think sharing information amongst each other is important. Sharing opportunities, putting a spotlight on HITLAB and what they do, I think is important, kind of advancing, our brand, our eminence. and how we, are playing our part in advancing innovation in healthcare, which really has been my passion. So collaboration, communication, sharing information, looking at different markets, saying, hey, I see this trend emerging. What are we doing about that? What's our position? What's our point of view? Constantly challenging, the next iteration of what's important to the health and technology ecosystem. I think is a big part of us being a sounding board, being an advocate, being someone who, the executive team can share information in a non-threatening way, and feel like, we're a collaborator and an innovator in how they're advancing their cause, I think is important.
Oh, good. So want to get back to you as an investor. And just, what's exciting you about digital health right now? What are some of the areas that most excite you? For example, for us, one of the big areas for us in the pharma services, AI and ML and drug discovery. Can we advance, better drug discovery for the industry? And just curious from your perspective and where you're investing, what's really exciting to you right now?
Yeah, we our big thesis is that healthcare is moving close to the consumer, and so any technology and innovation that does that's important. We believe with the current geopolitical environment that there will be a number of healthcare organizations, largely in the rural areas, that just don't have the revenue base to and diversification and innovation investments to survive. Many of them will close, and those organizations typically got acquired by stronger regional health systems. We largely think that's not going to happen at the pace that it did. It is more innovative and more efficient for organizations to invest in remote patient monitoring capabilities and travel capabilities, logistic capabilities to extend healthcare closer to the consumer and somewhat break apart the kind of traditional brick and mortar businesses. And I think consumers will be at the center of that. And so our investment thesis is largely driven by, the geopolitical and macro healthcare environment that we see ourselves in, over the next 10 years.
Good. So our last question, what advice would you maybe give to, the entrepreneurs in the audience that are, looking to get into healthcare or have just started their healthcare company? What are some of the things that they should be thinking about as they move forward?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And to some extent, it's back to basics, right? We see a lot of deals. We think it's important for founders and CEOs to have passion about, what they're doing, understand the market, know the problem they're solving in healthcare. Don't fall in love with the technology. Understand how your innovation is aligning against the larger significant issues in healthcare, and be very, discreet and concrete about that. There needs to be a path to profitability. I think, demonstrating that you have the ability to forge the right channel partnerships with the traditional market incumbents and non-traditional market incumbents that can advance your business. I actually had a call yesterday with two students from Johns Hopkins, and they had just incredible innovation, but they recognized pretty quickly, which was an important part of their strategy, that their go-to-market capabilities and strategies centered around really working with some of the larger organizations that could, in theory, be a competitor, right? And so, thinking really creatively about how you bring your innovation to market and the speed to market is an important part of the advice I would give entrepreneurs, CEOs, and founders of organizations in the space.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Peter. I really enjoyed talking to you. I look forward to reconnecting with you on the board and maybe doing a follow-up call, because I think we have a lot of synergies between our funds. But thank you for joining. And again, welcome to the board as well.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. And special thanks to Stan and what he's built at HITLAB. Very much look forward to the collaboration.
All right. Well, thank you. And with that, Stan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Outstanding, Bill and Peter. What a great interview, and a large round of applause for just all the good work that they're doing in finding and financing the best new companies. Our next to last guest today is Ainsley McLean. She's a general partner at Ainsley Capital. Ainsley, welcome to the program. And first of all, thank you for joining us. Again, if you could tell everyone a little bit about your journey, your background, that'd be a great way to start.
Of course. First of all, thank you so much.
If you turn your volume up a little bit, you're a little low on your volume.
Can you hear me now, Stan? And
A
everyone?
little higher.
Uh-oh. Okay, what about now?
Better.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Stan. So I'm Ainsley McLean. I'm a practicing neuroradiologist, and I also run an advising firm called Ainsley Advisory Group. We work with companies to help them accelerate the deployment of AI across the entire healthcare ecosystem, and a co-GP of Ainsley Capital, and we're investing in the AI transformation of healthcare, particularly in rural communities. Prior to that, I was a chief medical information officer and chief AI officer at Kaiser Permanente, where I was a practicing radiologist for close to 13 years. So I've seen kind of both sides, large corporate, and now I'm on the private equity side. I'm specifically looking at roll-ups and the transformation of the logistics industry in healthcare as we launch Fund 1.
Love it, love it. And from a private equity perspective, let's start there. What AI-related themes and different insights did you gain from JPM 2026 a few weeks ago in San Francisco?
Well, I've been listening to a lot of the speakers, and I'll echo some of the thoughts around just the enthusiasm that we saw this year. It was an incredible conference. For me, all of the best meetings happened on the side in hotels or restaurants, just catching up with other VC leaders, private equity leaders, as well as several of the startups and the founders from those organizations that I've just always am so impressed by what they're doing. I think the most resounding theme for me this year was just the maturation of artificial intelligence in healthcare. We've gone from talking about a lot of, I think, hype to really seeing more seasoned, thoughtful, real-world deployments across the healthcare ecosystem. There's a lot of emphasis on hospitals, and coming from a large hospital system, I really love that. But what made me really excited is more of a focus on the larger healthcare ecosystem outside of hospitals, because a strong thesis of our fund is that the future of healthcare is really outside the walls of a hospital and in the actual communities where it's wonderful if patients can receive care both within their home or extensions of hospitals. So it was just overall a really enthusiastic, energetic conference, and I left feeling really reinvigorated and excited about seeing sort of AI grow up and start to become, in the way we talk about it, more like other technologies that for those of us that practice large scale technical deployments, I think are more familiar with.
That's spot on. And when you look at what is happening right now within PE firms around healthcare companies, life science companies, what is going on with AI from operational readiness to scalability? What are you seeing there?
So I think it's such a great question. I think that if you look at where we are overall, it's early, but at the same time, people are seeing actual returns on investments in tech. And so I think the conversation of, is AI actually going to help me either increase my revenue or add efficiency to my business, I think is being answered. At the same time, we all know healthcare is really complicated. And so I don't think anyone has yet solved the one size fits all. I think sort of a really, some news that kind of broke early on the conference was just these larger players like OpenAI and Anthropic that are really throwing their weight into the conversation. And for me, I think that's a great thing. I think that when we try to tackle these large problems in healthcare, we need everyone at the table. It's going to be a matter of those founders who are able to really dive deep and are specialized. I think there's always going to be a role for them, but we also then need this incredible sort of clout and this large scale engineering efforts of these larger companies to really drive the actual technology forward and to continuously push the envelope. So I think it's going to be a combination of the large tech and LLM acceleration, but then these more specialized vertical companies in healthcare. But then, Stan, to answer your question, for me, as you can probably guess by the area I chose to launch and invest in, I feel that where we really need to just start rolling up our sleeves is in the application of AI. And I was so lucky to be a part of credible deployments across Kaiser Permanente. And I'm looking forward to doing that sort of within the companies that we end up rolling up and transforming in a real way, because I think that there's so much opportunity there. One of the things that I always struggle with, that was a little bit of a theme at this conference, and I think is going to be a theme for the next several years, is just the impact of AI on employment overall, not just within healthcare. And that's something for me I find really unsettling at times. But I also feel more and more I'm seeing, and this is, people may disagree with me, I'm just consistently seeing the role of the human. And so even as AI, as a member of your workforce, maybe you have, a few people and one or two AI in there. I just don't see a world in which I don't want to see a world in which there's only AI. And I struggle to see that conceptually within the actual healthcare environment, particularly from those who are practicing within it. I think, we're moving forward, we're advancing what we're capable of, but it continues to be a humbling space. So I think anyone who, says that, I still would push back on them and just say, first of all, why do we want that? But second of all, at the end of the day, let's work together. There's so many problems to solve, and we need to ultimately provide the best patient care we can.
It's fantastic. And let's just end up with this. I mean, you talked a little bit about this, but I'd like to hear more detailed answers on what you think distinguishes a healthcare company that's truly leveraging AI for transformation versus those who are just experimenting and kind of dipping their toes in the water.
Yeah, and I think you highlighted on something, which is we're kind of moving past that pilot phase in a lot of these systems to more of these large scale deployments. I would say that when you get to the point where you've proven a true return on investment of a technology that you've invested in and that you've scaled across your organization, and it's become a regular player in your technology stack, then you're truly deploying that technology. And I would say RCM is getting there. Pretty much there's a broad acceptance of the role of artificial intelligence in revenue cycle management. I have a few thoughts around that, and our firm is also working in and around that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to take that technology to an even more extreme in a way that eliminates a lot of the efficiencies. If you layer AI on a system that's broken, you're only going to get so far. But I think that in general across the healthcare system, there's still so much opportunity but widespread acceptance. And certainly the hospitals, another theme I heard at one of the talks I went to is just that the hospitals that are adopting this are going to grow and expand and succeed and thrive. And unfortunately, those that aren't able to adopt it are going to potentially wither. And so it's a really, really important opportunity to seize. And there are several companies that I work with and that I met with there as well that help these CEOs at the large infrastructure layer level get a hold of their data, have a bird's eye view of their AI that they're deploying across their entire hospital system. And I think that's critical when you're doing these pilots and more large scale deployments. We need to be able to see at a macroscopic level how successful these are, and then monitor them for any impacts on quality as well as the human component and how humans are working with the AI.
Yeah, I think you're really bringing up some good nuances in terms of what's working and what's not working with AI right now. And we've got a lot of folks in the audience listening to you from around the world and all ecosystems within the healthcare systems in the United States, from government to investor to startup to major stakeholder. What would you say as a leave-off moment for them, for folks that want to work with private equity, again, in all those different categories? What's the best way for them to think about working with private equity going forward?
I think one of the important takeaways is right now, the regulatory environment is ripe for disruption right now. And I think that when you look at, and obviously I'm a radiologist, when you look at some of the changes happening in that space, they're promoting innovation. I think that's really positive, and not just in the radiology space. I would say that don't forget about all of the outpatient care that's happening. And also, I know for me, for years, I always kind of got this not a great feeling. I think private equity gets a bad rap. But I think that when you look at real world problems and, empowering even physicians, and it may sound almost like an oxymoron to think of private equity and physician empowerment, but many physicians I know in the communities who are working for either large systems don't necessarily feel like they have power over their own practice either. So I think thinking about the problems that are being solved by individual specialty practices, individual primary care physicians, those are the sort of problems that private equity is trying to solve and help those doctors work through, because not everyone's going to be working for a system, and we don't necessarily want everyone to work for that. I just have to Stan, to the rural healthcare space right now and the space we're in, which is a lot of patients very, very far from hospitals who really need access to top quality of care. We have, and many of your community have, the solutions and the technology to get care to them and to bring them closer to care. And I think we can't leave patients behind. And so it's really fun to see that motion that's happening among so many states to really kind of roll up their sleeves and invest in a lot of these startups and help deploy these startups. So I feel privileged to be alongside a lot of these great companies, many of which are in the HITLAB community, and helping them solve the biggest problems in healthcare.
That's great. And Ainsley, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for all the good work, not only that you're doing now, but what you've done over the last 20 years. I mean, being chief AI officer for Kaiser, I can't even imagine the hours you're pulling on that kind of job. So congratulations on everything you're doing, and looking forward to hearing from you in the future and being a part of the HITLAB community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stan. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
So again, get in touch with Ainsley. You've got her LinkedIn in the chat box. She's just absolutely brilliant in what she's doing. And speaking of brilliant, we have one of the most brilliant startup founders in the digital healthcare ecosystem, the founder and the CEO of Sana Health, Richard Henbury. So Richard, thank you for joining us today. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. I never feel like the most brilliant. I feel like the most resilient, maybe. You're just going to be more resilient than the number of mistakes you made. I'm just ahead of that curve.
Maybe your brilliance is your resilience. That could be it too. So anyway, look, I think for those of the audience who've been living in a cave for the last 10 years and don't know about Sana and the revolutionary device that you have invented to help reduce pain and depression, just give them a 30-second thumbnail.
30 seconds thumbnail is audio-visual neuromodulation, put on, turn on, pulses of light, pulses of sound, specific frequencies of patterns in the brain, and sweet. So neuropathic pain was our de novo approval January 16th, and that was after a 10-year journey getting there.
Yeah, and so for the audience, HITLAB has validated, verified this technology, and we have had it demonstrated at various receptions in New York City over the last 7 years, where we had even like pharmaceutical executives using it and then saying their tennis elbow had disappeared that they'd had for the last year. So this is something that we are really investigating very closely, and from so many people that we've talked to and have been using it, it is working. So I think, but we're here to talk about the JP Morgan conference, Richard, and you've been at this now for several years. You've been at, the meeting well. What was different about this year? What stood out to you about the JPM meeting this year in terms of the adoption of novel, non-invasive health technologies?
There were some. I think first you've got to find your niche people that are going to support you, because we had great support from your folks. We had great support from Brain Mind. And Portfolio, the text that goes after women's health, and those particular sort of little groups are even more essential now, including yours at the earlier stages, because you're not what I was getting from the VCs was, great, we're interested, but we're not going to come in until you're post FDA. So you need those sort of those grassroots organizations that are helping people at the earlier stages. You need to find out who yours are and get embedded in those, because the VCs are much more, we'll wait till you're through FDA if you've got something innovative. So that was really noticeable this year, whereas last year that VCs were more willing to take bets at earlier stages.
And so that's interesting, right? Because we're seeing this kind of shift a little bit. And that must have a big impact on what you're doing as well, because how do companies like Sana balance this tightrope walk across clinical validation, regulatory approvals, and early commercialization?
Yeah, the early commercialization thing, that's another thing that's moved in the last year. A year ago, the feedback that I was getting was, as soon as you're through an FDA, then you can do a small Series B to then prove out your commercial pathway. That shifted to this year to be, not really. You kind of need your commercial proof before you can do your Series B. So either you need to prove out a reimbursement pathway, or you need actual sales. So that was another big shift of this year.
Okay. And what advice would you give to folks to create and be able to execute that pathway?
Well, ours is basically so similar to the clinical bit, where you want to treat every bit of data acquisition as a step up the ladder, rather than a bar you have to cross. What's working for us now is to apply the same approach to the reimbursement pathway and ask the question of, okay, what are the hypotheses you can test, and what is the cheapest, quickest, easiest way for you to test those hypotheses? The challenge with that is that most people won't talk to you about testing your reimbursement hypotheses until you have your FDA approval. But for us, now that we've got those, we're moving as quick as we can to 3 particular pilots to test out different parts of the reimbursement pathway. So yeah, it is moving towards how quickly can we test out each of those reimbursement pathway hypotheses.
That's fantastic. And in terms of the diffusion of technologies, especially digital technologies in the US healthcare system, you've been a big part of the case study, this experiment that we call Digital Health in America over the last 7 years, 8 years now. What lessons have you learned? What lessons has the Sana team learned about scaling evidence-based technology into this kind of free market healthcare complex?
Well, because we're just switching into the commercial bit now, our primary experience is, what do you need to get through the FDA? And that, when it's completely novel, that is really hard. It's always going to take longer. All of my existing investors sort of breathed a huge sigh of relief, and then came up with a lot more support as soon as that FDA approval was through. So for other startups further down the chain, it is ruthless control of your burn rate the whole way through until you've got your FDA approval. I mean, the other part of it is, if you can organize your data collection from the start to hit your endpoint of what do the people at the end of your rainbow want to see, and can you build that in early? That there is a balance there, because obviously anything you add into a clinical trial that complicates it. So adding in the health economic data into your early trials, there is a trade-off there of, is that going to slow you down? Is that going to make it more complicated? We have in the past done trials that were too complicated and therefore slowed them down and made them more expensive. And really, it is, what's the least amount of dollars you can burn to get to the next milestone, even if that costs you more time and effort after that milestone to move to the next one. So not trying to do too much too early, just what's your next milestone? What is the least amount you can get there? Because your money gets cheaper after each milestone. So we are now reaping the benefits of getting in a large amount of money when digital health financing was at its easiest and getting multiple shots on goal. That's not the world we live in now. The world we live in now is extreme capital constraints for early stage startups. So just ultra focus on exactly what is the data needed to hit a milestone, and work on doing that as cheaply as possible, which is obviously where people come to HITLabs, because that is your specialty.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, talk a little bit about that. We did a fun study. It was a barn burner of a study back in 2019 before the pandemic hit. In October, you came to us, I think October 2nd or 3rd, and said, I need a n equals 10 or 15 study using my device to show that it helps bring people into REM sleep by the end of the month. And I think we had it done by October 26th or something for this NATO Innovation Summit. Where
No, it was a lot less than that. Yeah, no, I rang you in your car and said I've just agreed to go and speak in Hungary at the NATO resilience final in 14 days, and we don't specifically have resilience to fatigue data. We have plenty of other data around sleep, but we don't have fatigue mitigation. Can you do a fatigue mitigation study and give me the data in 14 days? And you did it. And I think it was then of 20. I think you actually got a bunch of New Yorkers in and fatigued them and then gave them the device. So yes, so that was an incredible sprint effort that then did have us win that competition.
And about how much money did you guys win in that?
Well, in theory, we won $1 million. They haven't yet delivered it, but it did help us with every other DoD grant we've had since. We have repeatedly used that data, and that has been another learning, is that there's every bit of data that we've ever gathered has ended up being useful at some stage. Even the first 75-person study I did, when I literally booked a room in Berkeley and asked people to turn up and use a control device, and compared it back to back. Even that crappiest data is still being useful now, because now we're about to launch a pilot into infusion centers in cancer where it's a similar thing. So it's a very, there is no data that is ever wasted. Just get everything you can. And the other thing on that data point was just any data someone can get by coming to someone like you does activate the grant pathways sooner. My big learning on grants is the grant project managers are typically even more conservative than VCs, because they have a bigger cost when any grant fails within their portfolio. So data is absolutely key to successful grants. You can't go get a grant, even for the most basic stuff, without some earlier basic data. So data is king. Get it as cheaply and quickly as you can. So come and talk to HITLabs like I did.
Outstanding. Well, that's phenomenal, Richard. And any parting insights about JP Morgan 2026 that you'd like to leave the audience of FDA people and policymakers, investors, startups, payer, provider, employer, pharma, before you leave off today?
Well, we were when FDA came through with our de novo on January 16th, they put us as a class 1 device, and because we've got extremely strong patent protection, that was a massive win for us, because it allows us to do label and extensions within what they gave us very quickly and very cheaply. So even and FDA is moving in that direction of what can they put as a class 1 device to lower regulatory burden going forward. But as an innovative device, you're still going to be held to class 2 standards until you get to that point. So even more now than ever, it is worth startups putting effort and money into their patent portfolio, because the FDA is moving to that. What can they put to class 1 to give easier market access? But when you're the first into the market, you absolutely have to have that patent protection. So for us, that class 1 was a massive benefit because we had the patent protection in place. So of all the things you can skimp on as a startup, your patent protection is not one of them. So please, everyone who's coming up with something new, make sure that bedrock is in place.
That's fantastic. And do remember, for the HITLAB community, startup members that are out there, HITLAB does offer patent landscapes and patent development. And we have a bunch of patent lawyers that subscribe and do these. So they actually prosecute patents with the PTO for you for $5,000. So if you are looking to do that also efficiently, like Richard said, cash is king for you. Just get in touch with us at the lab and we'll help you get there. Richard, thank you again for joining us. Your insights are just so helpful, not just on JPM 2026, but also on the startup pathway for digital health devices. And looking forward to having you back on the show again sometime in the near future. Take good care.
Well, thank you.
All right, everybody, that wraps up our first symposium of 2026. Thank you, Ansley, Jerry, Pallavi, Rijo, the entire HITLAB team, Rachel Fredman, of course, and Raymond, Melissa, and certainly Nico. You guys are great for putting this together for us every month. Again, don't forget to subscribe to the Breakthrough Alliance, the Center for AI Testing and Evidence, or the Women's Health Tech Initiative to help support us continuing to put on this program for free for y'all. All right, everybody, have a great the rest of January. Take good care.